A very good morning, and I welcome you all to the 8th Professor M.TAHER Memorial Lecture Program. We would proceed today's program with the Guwahati University anthem, Jilikabo Luitore Par. I request everyone to rise in their position for the university anthem. The dais. I am glad to invite the chief guest of today's program, Professor Ranjit Kumar Dev Goswami, former professor and head, Department of English, Guwahati University, and former Srimanta Sankardev Chair Professor, Tezpur University, to grace the dais. Today's invited speaker, Dr. Chatidanand Sinha, former professor and chairman, Center for the Studies of Regional Development, Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi. I request, sir, to come to the dais. It is unfortunate that Mrs. Setara Taher, wife of late Professor M.TAHER, could not be here with us today because of her ill health. As a representative of Professor M.TAHER's family, I invite Professor Irshad Ali Sir, former head, Department of Anthropology, Guwahati University, to join the dignitaries on the dais. Next, we look forward for the presence of Professor Dhurbojyoti Sohoria, Head, Department of Geography, Guwahati University, and Professor Bimal Kumar Kaur, General Secretary, Professor M.TAHER Memorial Committee, on the dais. Now we move forward to the felicitation program. May I request Professor B.K. Kaur to felicitate our invited chief guest, Professor Ranjit Kumar Dev, with a Fulam Gamusa Japi. university memento, and a collection of books. I request Professor Dhrubajyoti Soharia to kindly felicitate our invited speaker, Dr. Sachidanand Sinha. Sir is being felicitated with a Fulam Gamosa, Japi, University Memento, and a collection of books. I request our student Priyakshi to kindly felicitate Professor Irshad Ali sir with a Fulam Gamusa. Yes, sir. Sorry, sir. May I invite our student Shakshi to kindly felicitate the President, Professor Abhini Kumar Bhagavati sir. I request Ranjita to kindly felicitate the head of our department, Professor Dhrubajyoti Soharia sir. I request Priyanka to kindly felicitate Professor Bimal Kumar Kaur sir. Thank you. Now I hand over the mic to the president of today's lecture program to carry forward the event. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody present, over the dais and the hall, for your kind presence. Now let us begin the program of this meeting. Now I request Professor B.K. Kaur, General Secretary of this Memorial Committee, to give his welcome address.
A very good morning, Namaskar. Honorable President of Professor M.TAHER Memorial Committee, Professor Abhini Kumar Bhagavati, our Honorable Chief Guest, Professor Ranjit Kumar Dev Goswami, former Professor and Head, Department of English, Guwahati University, and also former Srimanta Hankardev, Chair Professor, Tezpur University, Professor Sachidanand Sinha, former Professor and Chairman, Center for the Study of Regional Development, Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi, who is invited here as the memorial speaker for this time. Professor A.N.M. Irshad Ali Sir, whom we have invited to represent Professor M.TAHER family. He is well known among all of us. He is former professor and head, Department of Anthropology, Guwahati University. Professor Dhrubajyoti Sohoria, head, Department of Geography, Guwahati University. Invited guests from Guwahati University and different institutions from Guwahati and other places of Assam, and research scholars, members from the family of late Professor M.TAHER, well-wishers, my dear research scholars and student friends. It is indeed a great pleasure for myself and for the Department of Geography, Guwahati University, to welcome you all to this Professor M.TAHER Memorial Meet, which we are having today as 8th memorial lecture in honor of our revered teacher, Professor M.TAHER. Most of us present in the hall know Professor M.TAHER very well, but it is our pleasant duty to tell something about Professor Taher sir to our students and research scholars. Professor Taher is one of the founder professors of the Department of Geography, who joined this department after his master's from Calcutta University in the year 1958. And after serving for about 33 years, he retired from this department as former professor head, Dean Faculty of Science in the month of March 1991. And he left all of us on 24th of February 2015 at the age of around 85. And after his passing away, we formed this Professor M.TAHER Memorial Committee in the Department of Geography when I was head of the department on 4th of June 2015, the day on which we were having memorial lecture program in honor of Professor H.P. Das. And this committee was formed with Professor A.K. Bhagwati as the president and myself as the general secretary, and taking other members both from the department and also from outside in the committee. And as per the decision of the committee and also support from the family member of our revered teacher, Professor M.TAHER, we have been conducting this lecture program every year on 21st of April to celebrate his birth anniversary. Today is the 93rd birth anniversary of late Professor Taher. We want to pay our tribute as his students, research scholars and followers. And we want to pass on the message of his contribution and as an ideal teacher to the coming generation. As per the decision and support of the family members and also of this memorial committee, we have been organizing this memorial lecture program every year on this day, starting from the year 2016. Prior to that, we organized the first death anniversary on 24th of February 2016 in the Department of Geography. And after that, along with this particular program, we have also instituted 2 fellowships, one for postgraduate geography student studying in the Department of Geography, Guwahati University, and one for doctoral student carrying out research in the field of geography in the Department of Geography, Guwahati University, with a fellowship of rupees 25,000 per year. And in that way, this fellowship was instituted in the year 2017, and we have been giving away this award to the selected awardee with respect to merit and also looking at the economic condition of marginality. And in this way, we have already awarded 10 fellowships to PG students of the department and 4 to doctoral students so far. Apart from that, 2 years back, we established one geography museum in the Department of Geography in the honor of Professor M.TAHER, which was opened on 24th of April 2022, and we are happy that it was inaugurated by one of our teachers, Professor D.C. Goswami, who is with us today. So in this way, we are carrying forward the activities as decided by the Memorial Committee and also as supported by the family member of late Professor M.TAHER. So far as the memorial lectures are concerned, the first memorial lecture was delivered on 24th of April 2016 by Professor R.B. Singh, now late Professor R.B. Singh from the Delhi School of Economics, Delhi University, followed by Professor Rana P.B. Singh from BHU in the year 2017, Dr. R.K. Ranjan Singh from Manipur, who became Union Minister also of External Affairs and Education, Government of India. Fourth lecture was given by Professor Sudipto Adhikari in the year 2019 from Patna University. He is also no more now. Then fifth lecture was delivered by Dr. Foni Deka in the year 2021. Unfortunately, we could not organize a memorial lecture in the year 2020 because of COVID situation. Then sixth lecture was delivered by Professor H.S. Sharma in the year 2022 from Rajasthan University, Jaipur. And the last time the lecture was delivered by Dr. Prithis Nag in the year 2023. He is a geographer, but he served as Director NATMO and also Surveyor General of India, Dr. Prithis Nag. And this time we are very fortunate that we have with us Professor Sachidanand Sinha, and he is also a well-known personality in the field of academics, in the field of geography, as a person from social geography, working in the field of educational inequality, regional development disparity, so on and so forth. We are very fortunate to have Professor Sachidanand Sinha today in our midst. We are equally very much fortunate to have Professor Ranjit Kumar Dev Goswami sir, because of, although he has retired, he is very much busy with his academic activities. Despite his busy schedule, he has consented to our request, and he is now with us as the chief guest of today's function. And I am very happy, although the size of our audience is less because of ongoing election situation, but I am happy that some of our friends, both from academics and from Professor M.TAHER family, and also from Department of Geography, Guwahati University, and from other local colleges and university, some of them are present in our midst. We have guests from North Bengal University, Professor Sushma Rohatgi with us. We have a number of your colleagues from the different departments of Guwahati University. We have Dr. Sarath Phukan also in our midst, Professor Goswami sir, Professor Sandhya Goswami, Madam, Professor Aradhana Goswami Madam is also present with us, Jayasri Madam, Gyanasri Madam. We have Professor Kalyan Das, we have Arup Jyoti Soikia from IIT and Kalyan Das from Cotton University. In that way, we are happy to see your presence, and that will be a source of encouragement for all of us, and more so to our learned speakers. With these few words, looking forward to your cooperation, I conclude here. Thank you very much.
So, thank you, Professor Kaur, for your welcome address. Now, as per agenda, Bonti Prozolon, lighting of lamp, and floral tribute to the portrait of late Professor M.TAHER. মই ভাবিছোঁ আমাৰ ইৰছাদ আলী ছাৰ আমাৰ মাজত আছে, তেখেতেই প্ৰথমতে আমাৰ বন্তি গছ জ্বলাই শ্ৰদ্ধা নিবেদন কৰিব, আৰু তাৰপিছত আমিও তেখেতক সহযোগ কৰিম।
Distinguished invited guests on the dais, invited guests of the dais, our research scholars, students, and friends. So, when we stand here to say a few words about Muhammad Taher sir, actually we all know that he needs no introduction. All of us know him very much from our core of our heart, but I will try to speak out some of his a sports bio sketch to enlighten our young friends, especially the students, so that they also know what a personality we had with us in our department and how he served this state as well as country for the cause of geography as well as other field of academics. He born on Khutikotiya village in Lakhimpur district, Assam, and primary schooling, he had his primary schooling number 47 Telahi School in Lakhimpur. Matriculation in 1948, securing first division from Lakhimpur Government High School. Then he completed his ISc in first division in 1951 from Cotton College and BSc degree with first class first position in geography honors in 1954 from Cotton College. He earned his MSc degree in geography from Calcutta University with first class in 1957. He started his career as a research scholar in NATMO in 1957 to 58 and joined the Department of Geography, Guwahati University as a lecturer in July 10, 1958 and served for 33 years in different positions. Besides serving the department, he held several positions, academic positions in the university, like Dean Faculty of Science from 1990 to 91, Secretary University Classes, Secretary Coordination Committee of Publication of Textbook in regional language, and nominated as member of Executive Council of Guwahati University. He also had held different positions outside Guwahati University, Chairman Board of Secondary Education, Government of Assam in 1991-92, Director, OKD Institute of Social Science and Development, Guwahati. He was a nominated member of Executive Council of Dibrugarh University and Rajiv Gandhi University of Arunachal Pradesh, and also a member of Board of Governors of KK Hindik State Open University. And he was the president of governing body of several affiliated colleges of Guwahati University. He earned his PhD degree from University of Auckland, New Zealand on August 16, 1965 on the topic Asians in New Zealand, a Geographical Review and Interpretation. He published numerous books on regional geography of Northeast India and Assam and different textbooks, both in regional language or in English. He contributed substantially for the preparation of Atlas in Assam. Many members of books and articles for children and mother tongue he published. And one of the very major contribution is that encyclopedia in Assamese, that is Biswakos. He worked as a chief editor for volume 8 and 9 of the encyclopedia in Assamese, published by Assam Sahitya Sabha in 2005 and 6. Several awards and honors also are conferred to him, like Radha Govinda Borua Memorial Award 2003, Assam Government's honor on the occasion of Independence Day 2009, Bharat Shikshan Mandal Assam honor 2010, Manav Vikas Samaj Guwahati honor 2010, ERD Foundation honor, and National Award from Kesidas Commerce College. It's very difficult to summarize everything of a person like Professor Taher sir, but I believe that the effort by the Memorial Committee will continue to keep the memories in our heart and enlighten our new generation to follow the path the Professor Taher sir showed to us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Sohoria, for your very good presentation. Now, address by chief guest, Professor Ranjit Kumar Dev Goswami, former professor and head of the Department of English, Guwahati University, and former Srimanto Shankardev Chair, Professor, Tezpur University. তেখেত আমাৰ মাজত আছে, আমাৰ সৌভাগ্য, এজন ভাল বক্তা, এজন পণ্ডিত লোক, সকলোৱে সন্মানৰ চকুৰে চাই, গতিকে মই তেখেতৰ বক্তব্য প্ৰদান কৰিবলৈ অনুৰোধ জনালোঁ।
Professor Bhagavati, Professor Sinha, Professor Kaur, Professor Abu Nasser Muhammad Irshad Ali, Professor Sohoria, ladies and gentlemen present. It's a signal honor to be so invited. This morning I recalled certain things relating to the Guwahati University campus. When I was here in the new flat, I was Professor Horen Sharma's neighbor. When I was in quarter number 21, I was Professor Naren Bhattacharya's neighbor. And when I was in quarter number 9, eminent geographers like Professor Dulal Goswami, Professor Abani Bhagavati, were my neighbors. But I know next to nothing about geography, in fact. And my knowledge of geography is limited only to my reading of some books not talked about nowadays. Sardar K.M. Panikkar, he was my geography guru. Sardar K.M. Panikkar, geographical factors in Indian history, India and Indian Ocean, and all these books I read early. Anyway, since Professor Sohoria and Professor Kaur have already talked about the activities of Professor Taher, the academic achievement of Professor Taher, I'll just concentrate on one or two things. I knew Professor Taher as a teacher, as a great teacher, and I had an opportunity to come in close contact with him when the Academic Staff College was established in, I think, 1988 or 89. And Dr. Purna Somar from the chemistry department was chosen as the first director. And we normally met in the director's chamber, which was there. Now the Department of Journalism is there. We met one another there. And at Professor Purna Somar's bidding, I also attended 2 or 3 of his lectures. So he had his peculiar way of teaching, always using the blackboard. And the topic would be there. For example, the concept of an ideal teacher. And it would immediately be subdivided into some 6 or 7 parts. You will be drawing boxes and write one thing after another. Knowledge of the subject, number 1. Number 2, punctuality, and so on and so forth. So there are several stages. First, a kind of oversimplification. Then simplification. Then he would try to come to terms with the complexity of the subject. So this was Professor Taher. And you can use all sorts of adjectives to describe him. Such a great teacher, compassionate, forbidding figure, more or less, but then very compassionate. And although, as has been pointed out, he retired in the year 1991, he remained active till the end of his life. I think he continued to take classes in the Academic Staff College till around 2010, if I remember correctly. Because I have been associated with the Academic Staff College since its beginning. Dr. Purna Sharma, then my friend Krishna Gopal Bhattacharya, then Bhavesh Goswami. So we normally found him in action in the classrooms of the Academic Staff College. This is one. Another thing that not many people talk about. Already, I think Professor Sohoria or Professor Kaur had referred to Professor Sinha's work on inequality, regional inequality. I'll just say a few things about inequality or equality. The 19th century Assam was an epoch of inequality. inequality. Inequality, for example, the Aryans and the non-Aryans, Brahmins and the Sudras, high and the low, male, female, and examples can be multiplied. And most important examples are Assam Buronji by Holiram Dhikial Fukan, published in 1829. Then Gunaviram Borua's Assam Buronji, published in 1875. So the concept of inequality, high, low. And since I'll say a few things about Professor Taher's contribution to Assamese lexicography, of all things. Let me tell you that this concept of equality, inequality, got reflected in almost all the writings published in the 19th century, including even one of the most important books, Hemko, by Hemchandra Borua. Meanwhile, he passed away in the year 1896, and after 4 years of his death, it came to be published at the initiative of three G's, Goswami, Hemchandra Goswami, then Gordon, Colonel P.R.T. Gordon, and Gate, Edward Gate. It was at the initiative of these three eminent persons that Hemko came to be published in the year 1900. And just look at the first entry of Ohomia Hemko. O is the first letter of the Assamese alphabet. O hol Ohomia Bornomalar Prothom Akhor. Shobdor agot thakile I obhab thoka ba beya bujay jene Obrahman. When O is there before a particular word, it means some kind of deficiency or lack. And this is there, all true. In matters of description of the different castes, for example, this is very evident. And let me now come to the second most important lexicon published in Assamese, that is Chandrakanta Abhidan. Chandrakanta Handik was our founder, Vice Chancellor K.K. Handik's brother. Chandrakanta and Indrakanta. It was in the 20s that when K.K. Handik was away in England, along with his brother, Lakhikanta Handik, his brothers, Chandrakanta and Indrakanta, passed away in Jorhat. They were suffering from typhoid. Just think of someone dying of typhoid. Anyway, I think within a span of 1 week, these two brothers passed away. And the devastated father, Radhakanta Handik, considered perpetuating their memory by instituting a trust, Chandrakanta Indrakanta Trust. He donated an amount of 30,000 for the creation of Chandrakanta Abhidan, and another endowment for perpetuating the memory of Indrakanta. Incidentally, both of them were brothers of our founder, Vice Chancellor K.K. Handik. Anyway, Chandrakanta Abhidan is also cast in the mold of Hemko. It is the same kind of inequality evident in Hemko. So it was, I think, in the year 2002, I offered a proposal to the university that we should now revise Chandrakanta Abhidan. Already the second edition was out, and the second edition was it was Professor Neug's work, Professor Neug and Professor Upendranath Goswami. But still, these things remained, particularly in the description of castes and various sets of people. When you belong to the so-called higher class, you will be described in a particular way. When you belong to the so-called lower class, it would be a language of contempt. Ihote অভক্ষ ভক্ষণ কৰে ইহঁতে এনেকুৱা মাংস খায় এনেকুৱা খায় So since a committee was formed, then Professor Taher was there, I was also there, Professor Usharanjan Bhattacharya and Professor Rajan Sharma of the Sanskrit department, we were all there. We had meetings there in the Guwahati University Press, which was there. So I very politely told Professor Taher to undertake the work of revision in terms of, okay, you must leave out these things. For example, these things are totally unnecessary. There are various castes in Assam, and why bring in this concept of high and low? Everyone is equal. After all, you have produced a lexicon which will have to say something about the different castes. And, okay, Professor Taher agreed. You know the kind of person that he was. Quietly he agreed, and for full 2 years, he was there in the Guwahati University Press, and Mr. Biren Lokor, who had passed away, I frequently went there. I found him at work, omitting certain things in the description. For example, if it is the description of a so-called high caste, it will be one language. If it is of the plains tribe or, okay, hill tribes, or people belonging to the so-called lower order, quote unquote, okay, he had very carefully gone through the entire lexicon and edited all this. This is one of his signal contributions to Assamese lexicography. If Chandrakanda Abhidhan is what it is now, it is because of Professor M.TAHER. This is something wonderful. You have talked about different contributions of Professor Taher. He wrote about so many things. He wrote about geography, he wrote about history. And I remember since he was appointed here in the year 1958, the era of Professor Hendik was already over. The second Vice Chancellor was Dr. S.K. Bhuya. It was not for nothing that S.K. Bhuya had appointed Professor Taher, because he was a man who knew history so well. So history and geography are twin brothers, I think. And he had knowledge of history, such a great teacher. And I told you about his contribution to Assamese lexicography. And I congratulate the Department of Geography for trying to perpetuate his memory by instituting this series of lectures. And I think Professor Sinha will very soon deliver his lecture. Another thing, I think it will be on the market forces. I know next to nothing about market. There are different types of markets in the Northeast, Assam, Meghalaya, Nagaland, Arunachal. Since I am a frequent visitor to Mizoram, and just last month, I spent some 5 days there in Mizoram, found that it is a different kind of market with cross-border trading of an extreme kind. All sorts of foreign goods are to be found there in the Mizoram markets. People there are a very nice set of people. Very honest, no theft, no burglary. Just think of one particular state in the whole of the country that doesn't say anything about theft or burglary. You just keep your money there, 4 lakhs, 5 lakhs rupees there, you leave your car there. No one will touch that. And it was a professor of Hindi who told me that I have been here, sir, for the last 30 years. I have not come across any such instance of theft or burglary. This is something alien to. Maybe it is not because of the market. Maybe in spite of the market forces at work. This is Mizoram, one of the finest states in the entire country with high degree of literacy. People are very nice, very fine. And maybe some of them are drug addicts. The boys, for example, they quarrel amongst themselves, but then not crimes of the kind we are familiar with here in the city of Guwahati. So we remember Professor Taher as a great man. In fact, he would be among the top 25 or 30 great teachers of the university. We had great teachers, right from Banikanto Kakoti down to our times. Yeah, he would be among at least the 30 great teachers Guwahati University had produced during the last 75 years of its existence. And I again congratulate the Department of Geography, Professor Bhagavati, Professor Sahuria, Professor Kaur, particularly Bimal Kaur, who has been organizing this lecture. Thank you so much for inviting me. Thank you.
So, thank you, Professor Goswami, for actually we also don't know much about his contribution towards, revision, modification of MCOs and all that. We simply knew that he was involved, but the way he worked, for the improvement of the entire work, we did not know much. Anyway, and I know আমাৰ গোস্বামী ডাঙৰীয়াই আৰু বহুত কথা জানে আচলতে ৰায় ছাৰৰ লগত তেখেতে আকৌ সৰু সৰু কথাবিলাক বৰ ধুনীয়াকৈ কয় আজি সিমানলৈকে নগ'ল আৰু অলপমান গ'লে ভাল আছিলে কিন্তু সৰু সৰু ইমান ইণ্টাৰেষ্টিং কথা আছে ৰায় ছাৰে যে যিকোনো এটা কথা কিবা এটা ক'লেই যে লেখে সেইবিলাক কথা খুব সুন্দৰকৈ তেখেতৰ মনত আছে সেইবিলাক বৰ দৰকাৰী কথা আচলতে এজন মানুহৰ ব্যক্তিত্বৰ ক্ষেত্ৰত এনিৱে we are very much enlightened by his deliberation. Thank you, Dada. Now, I request Professor Anup Soikia to kindly introduce our invited speaker, Professor Sasidananda Sinha.
Served as Professor of Social Geography and Regional Development at the Center for the Study of Regional Development, Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi. His area of teaching and research includes social geography, geography of social well-being, indicators of social development, and access to educational and health services, particularly concerning the socially and economically marginalized groups, women, and the physically challenged in India. He has published over 70 research papers and over 3 monographs and edited self-learning tests for geography students for IGNOU. He has guided over 70 doctoral research theses and over 80 MPhil dissertations. He has been actively engaged with central and state governments and civil society organizations. He was a member of the 11th plan of the UGC and advisor to the Punjab Governance Reforms Commission. In 2016-17, he prepared a report for the CABE Committee on Pathways to Improving Public Schools in India. He has been on the editorial boards of several international journals. He was a visiting professor at Nara Women's University and Chiba National University in Japan for various durations. May I now request Professor Sinha to deliver the 8th M.TAHER Memorial Lecture on a very interesting topic entitled Between the Mists and Clouds, Is the Market Drawing New Divides in Northeast India? Sir.
Let me take 1 minute only. Actually, Professor Sinha, I think he was a student of CSRD JNU. He became a professor there. Now he is president of Institute of Indian Geographers, Pune. And one thing just for my students, I want to, tell you one thing that since the beginning of CSRD, our department has a very close relation with the, faculties of CSRD. You all know that JNU was established in 1969 and CSRD came up in 1971. Center for the Study of Development or Study of Regional Development. It was not simply geography. It is a center for the study of regional development, and the idea was completely new for the Indian geographers. It was an interdisciplinary approach in the true sense of the term. Professor Munish Raza actually, he was the first rector, I think, if I remember correctly, of that university, JNU, and the first vice chancellor was Partho Sarothi. These two people, Professor Munish Raza, he postgraduated from Aligarh Muslim University, then first rector, and the entire JNU campus the landscape of that campus is actually the architect of all these ANU campuses was Professor Munish Raza. The naming of the hostels, for example, the Narmada, Kaberi, এইবিলাক যে নামবিলাক ৰাখিছে সব Professor Munish Raza. And we are very fortunate that large number of students from Northeast India, from Nagaland, Manipur, Assam, Mizoram and all that, এইবিলাকে আমাৰ জেএনইউত পঢ়াৰ সুযোগ পাইছিলে because of Professor Munish Raza. আমাৰ ল'ৰা ছোৱালীবিলাকে সিমান নম্বৰ সম্পৰ পোৱা নাছিলে, গতিকে তেখেতে কৰিছিলে কি যে ফ্ৰম নৰ্থ ইষ্ট যদি কিছুমান ল'ৰা ছোৱালী আহে তেতিয়াহ'লে এটা ৰিলেক্সেশ্যন দিছিলে 10 মাৰ্কছ 15 মাৰ্কছ এই ধৰণে ৰিলেক্সেশ্যন দিছিলে এণ্ড মেনি ষ্টুডেণ্টছ ফ্ৰম গোটেই আমাৰ ইয়াৰ পৰা বহুত ল'ৰা ছোৱালী গৈ পেলাই তাত পঢ়িছিলে আৰু ডেট ৱাজ এ নিউ থিংকিং আই শুড চে that is the evolution of region. Take for example, regional relation, interaction, regional inequality, regional development, all these things they actually took into consideration, and there were, statisticians, Aslam Mahmood, there were economists, G.S. Bhallar, great economist, there were geologists. In that way, the entire center was constituted. Amar yate Kolyan Das, Teket Cotton Vishwavidyalaya Bortoman professor, he was a student of that university. Through him, I frequently went there. Aru eta dangor kotha, Professor Munish Raza came to our department as a visiting professor, as a national professor. He delivered 5 lectures in our department in 1977. Then in 1984, Professor Aizazuddin Ahmed, he came. He delivered 2-3 lectures in our department here. Then Professor Qureshi, another very famous person, he came in 2003 in that way. And then Professor Sivaswamy, he came to, Guwahati, Assam. He stayed in Tezpur, and he visited a lot of places there in Tezpur, and he came to our department also. In that way, we have a very close relation. And one book edited by Professor Aizaz Ahmad on regional development, I think 2-3 volumes. And one paper by Professor Tahir is also there in that book. In that book, very interesting book, every student of geography should go through. In each of the section, there was an introduction by Professor Ahmad, very interesting, and he tried to actually convince the Indian geographers that a new thinking, something very special actually was developed in JNU CSRD. And Munish Raza was the exponent of that kind of thinking. Aru heituk teu koisile, that is the Munishian school. Amar India বহুত মানুহ আমাৰ আছে জিওগ্ৰাফিত, কিন্তু আমি এটা পাৰ্টিকুলাৰ স্কুল, এটা নিউ থিংকিং, নিউ আইডিয়া, নিউ থট, নিউ মেথডলজি আমাৰ দ্বাৰা খুব বেছি ডেভেলপ হোৱা নাই আচলতে। কিন্তু প্ৰফেচাৰ মুনিছ ৰাজা তেওঁ CSRD তেনেকুৱা ধৰণৰ এটা চিন্তা চৰ্চা চলাইছিলে। আৰু প্ৰফেচাৰ আইজাজ আহমদ, ভেৰি চিৰিয়াছ পাৰ্চন, ডিড নট ৰাইট মাছ, কিন্তু খুব ভাল মানুহ আৰু খুব পণ্ডিত মানুহ আছিলে। আমাৰ গোস্বামী ছাৰে খুব ভালকৈ জানে। আৰু JNUৰ লগত আমাৰ যিটো সম্পৰ্ক, আমাৰ গোস্বামী ছাৰ একেবাৰে সেইটোৰ লগত ওতঃপ্ৰোতভাৱে জড়িত থকা মানুহ। আমাৰ SP ৰাস্তাত ৰাহেশ ছাৰো খুব জড়িত আছিল। আৰু আইজাজ আহমদ, when he came to Guwahati, he visited professor, he went to Professor Tahir's residence, and they maintained a very good relation, so far I know. So therefore, this is a very good chance for us, and Professor Sinha is also very close to us, and he is a very renowned scholar in the field of social geography. I now request, I have taken 1 minute more, please don't mind. I request you kindly to deliver your lecture. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Professor Ranjit Goswami, Chief Guest, Professor Saharia, Head of the Department of Geography, Professor Avani Bhagbati, Professor Kar, General Secretary, members of Professor M.TAHER's Memorial Committee, distinguished faculty of Guwahati University and Department of Geography, students, ladies and gentlemen. I really do not know, sir, whether there is a Munician School of Geography, but because nobody has worked on it. But I believe that there was a certain kind of an idea that has been in circulation, and it has certainly gone across and is not confined to the JNU premises only. And some of those thoughts I would like to share here today, because I'm going to concentrate primarily on one of his models, which has been one of the very challenging models, but perhaps we don't teach and we don't learn them in our geography classes. So allow me, sir, to read my presentation this morning. It gives me immense personal and professional pleasure as I stand before you to deliver the 8th Professor M.TAHER Memorial Lecture 2024. I'm indeed very grateful to the organizers, particularly Professor Bimalkar, for this honor. My response is a sincere and modest appreciation of an honor I have no right to expect or deserve, but a claim to have been part of a small tribe of social geographers to which Professor Taher belonged gives me a sense of belongingness. I take this opportunity to pay my deepest respects and tribute to the first generation of social and cultural geographers of India. Professor Jazuddin Ahmed, my teacher, who in collaboration with Professor Munis Raza founded the subdiscipline of social geography, much different from the Western perspective way back in the Northeast. Such impounding of surpluses did not lead to any kind of a significant capital formation, for which I'll have to work a little more, but that's part of my hypothesis. The consequential spatial structure has some of these assumptions. Number one, the dependent enclaves of urban agglomeration acting as outposts of the metropolitan economy. The satellitic centers, and there could be different grades and shades of satellitic centers, usually constitute a cluster subserving the main enclave, which is the agglomeration enclave, in this context Calcutta then, as subsidiary assembly points of primary produce and labor force at the lower level of infrastructural facilities. Now, all these subsidiary centers did not grow in terms of infrastructure, or did not really create infrastructure for conducive for the labor, but it created a kind of an architecture in which the exploitation of labor could become far more entrenched. Plantation and mining areas necessarily develop in clusters at a very low level of urbanization. Now we can see that all these plantation areas did not support a very significant agglomeration economy. The hinterland of primary produce, other than the plantation crops, is comprised of rural areas producing food and cash crops, and it is there all over the country, which also continues today. The colonial dependent setting acknowledges the following features: that there are non-economic compulsions that characterize the accumulation process. And we can see that in the context of Northeast, particularly in the context of Assam, where there were non-economic compulsions, which in fact played a very, very significant role. And and this has been accounted for particularly in the works of Amlandu Guha, where he talks about from plantation Raj to Swaraj. You have a very extensive account, and also in Sabyasachi Bhattacharya's account on the regional economy, especially on the eastern Indian part. Multiple modes of generation, appropriation, and utilization of surplus operate simultaneously and are not necessarily in conflict with one another, which many theories and theoreticians tend to believe that there are certain kinds of dualisms and they cannot perhaps survive together. But in the colonial structure, all such tensions between and among arms of exploitation were very quickly resolved and very significantly resolved through various kinds of rules and regulations. Under the conditions that the two conditions that I talked about, the process of monetization and commercialization of economy unleashes through the forcible penetration of the exigencies of the metropolitan accumulation of claims. We can see it in the context of tea, that there were, like when I was talking about the non-economic fact considerations, one of the instruments that was employed was by the British in order to promote tea was that Indian tea is the pure form of tea, and in fact, I saw many such what you can call it advertisements where it has also been symbolized as pure and national, and patriotic. In fact, there is a book by Rappaport on that is the taste of the empire, if that is the right title of the book, which in fact provides us with very useful insights. And Amitabh Ghosh in the early parts of his book, recently published book on opium trade and opium war, I'm forgetting the title of it, is Smokes and Ashes, if I'm not wrong, has some description of how this botanical capture of what is called the Chinese tea, and how the Chinese tea was sold in the European market as something which was not such pure, because for the Chinese trade that they were engaged in, they had to pay in silver. So it was opium, tea, and silver, the triangular relationship between the three, which really determined this whole framework of exploitation and promotion of tea industry in Assam. So I'll just quickly run through, and I'll come to the modified colonial model, which in fact was again proposed by the two, Chattopadhyay and Professor Raza, where in the absence of the metropolitan capital, not that it disappeared suddenly after independence, you had a number of main agglomeration centers. And you can see, if you were to perhaps look at as to how the commodity flows right from the 50s, 60s, and 70s, and this is a remarkable work that two geographers did. One was, of course, Brian Jailberry on how much do we really export, how much do we really take out from a certain region, from these various agglomeration centers, and how much do we really get back of it. That means, the trade relations. Now, one of the limitations of this was that, the trade data, the inter-regional flow data was only available through the railways. The road, that which was being transported by the road, it was not very comprehensive, and therefore, no systematic analysis could be done on that basis. But if you look at the inter-regional flow, even at the district level, you'll find in the context of Northeast, and I was in a position to extract some of the minor level data from the same study. It was not my study, it was the study done again by Agrawal and Raza. They were in a position to see as to the ratio of export and the origin of the products and that which was being received, because the lack of purchasing power of the people, there was hardly any market available for the goods that was being imported. But the kind of goods that were getting exported, the ratio was in fact 3 times higher, right? And this ratio was all converging not anywhere else but in Kolkata. Kolkata also, as you have pointed out, Arup Jyoti, that London was the market where the tea would be auctioned, but it was the Calcutta from where it would originate, and a fine description of how it was being carried down in another book by Arup Jyoti on the Brahmaputra, which in fact in one of the chapters he talks about as to how it was the Brahmaputra played a very, very important role in transportation of tea caskets, and so on and so forth. So that's very interesting, and that calls for a lot of research in these areas. After independence, efforts were made by the government to alter the regional or the colonial regional structure by influencing the location of productive activities in space. That means, we started with what we call the backward area development programs and so on and so forth. And we started prioritizing through public investment in particularly in the resource-rich areas, particularly in Jharkhand, which is known as Jharkhand today. Considerable public investment and state-sponsored economic activities in the resource-rich regions were made. New centers of public investment, such as those in the captive mining areas, the green revolution areas, dams and irrigation projects, and the state-sponsored programs such as the drought-prone area program, they all attracted attention. The basic categories and structure, nevertheless, did not undergo any significant change. The enclave agglomeration is changed. It is no more an outpost of the metropolitan economy, although it continues as a major trade outlet and becomes the center of conglomerate big businesses, metropolitan collaboration, capital and state institutions. Its functional character nevertheless remains unchanged. The structure of urban settlements and the hierarchy did not change at all, it remained intact. A new set of satellite centers of public investment did come up to subserve again the old main agglomerations. They too acquired enclave and insulated character, as these had very limited neighborhood effects. So you can see there is a beautiful piece that Professor Raza again wrote, that whether we are developing resources or we are developing people. So a kind of a mismatch between people and resources. He was the first person to have written any such interesting piece where he raised certain questions about we should be paying, the human geographer should be paying more attention on development of people. As I said, they too acquired enclave and insulated character, as these had very limited neighborhood effects. It needs to be, that means, if those areas and agglomeration did not have any significant neighborhood effects, it again were enclaves. It needs to be researched as to how this modified social structure and organization of the economy and transport network altered the configuration of the spatial economy. Here I take the case study of tea industry that had colonial origin in order to elucidate the point above. In his 2022 lectures on commodities and capitalism, Professor Anand Yang of Washington University, if I'm not wrong, talked about, and he has spent much of his childhood in India. He had, and that's why you have this combination, Anand, which is an Indian name, and Yang, which is a Chinese name. He has been writing extensively, particularly on my district, the district I come from, the bazaars of Saran, the bazaars of Bihar and all that. So he has been writing extensively on that. So this was one of his lecture that I had a chance to listen to, and much later. So Anand Yang on commodities and capitalism talked about how India and Assam tea became a strong commodity that defined colonialism and capitalism and concomitant socio-economic and political consequences. The story of tea is adequately captured by several authors who have produced authentic historical accounts on the emergence of tea industry in Assam and the related changes in agrarian structure, land ownership practices, labor, and the local economy. I would not like to again, because some of the authors who have worked on this I have already talked about. As someone once said, it's good to think with a cup of tea. Tea came to India as a corollary of a sustained contest between the West and the Chinese. The British championed tea cultivation in the northeast Brahmaputra, claiming that the Indian tea industry would destroy and annihilate the Chinese monopoly. The British and the directors of the East India Company had to also reckon with the fact that every commodity they purchased from China had to be paid for with silver. Because of the trade imbalance, there was a huge outflow of bullion from the West to China. The trade was still profitable for the British, as the Chinese goods could be sold at 3 to 4 times in the markets of Europe. There was only one means through which EIC, that is the East India Company, could address its balance of payment problem with China, increasing the flow of exports of from its Indian colony. And which were the products? The cotton, the opium, and then comes tea. A triangular relationship between 3 commodities, tea, opium, and silver, and not to miss the plantation economy of sugar, because sugar also became one of the instruments of indentured labor and expansion of colonialism attached to the taste of the European market. That was tea with sugar, and that is where the sugar got associated with tea. And that underlines the story of imperialism and capitalism. Tea was perhaps one of the first commodities that started with plantation, but soon the responsibility for the tea industry was handed over to a newly established company, Assam Company, a joint stock company formed in London way back in 1839 by a few merchants and investors. The spiraling profits of the company was accompanied by government rules and regulations and support to the British planters at the cost of increasing pauperization due to massive land taxes, forced land grab, and displacement of the local peasantry. You have a very eventful story that I read of the Sangpos being driven out from the hills in order that those hills could be profitably converted into tea estates. And labor, of course, which was imported not only from China but also from rest of India, particularly the region that I come from. And if you go back to the folk songs in Bihar, we have 2 varieties of folk songs. One which talks about husband returning from Assam, from the tea gardens, and that's called Kajri. Kajri because they come back during the time when the black clouds are advancing from the east towards towards Bihar. That's the time when it's time to keep the field ready for the paddy. So you have many layers of sentiments, which in fact is seen in areas which in fact fed the tea gardens. And Santhals have many more of that, which in fact, part of it I don't understand, but I have heard those songs myself, the folk songs. But it also brought in a never-ending war between nature and tea plants. This is also very important. Psyche has pointed out. And the consequent impact of botanical theft and invasion. So the botanical theft of tea and, of course, the invasion that followed, that left a permanent scar on the ecology, economy, and people of Assam. Preference for tea highlands and virgin mountain soil as suitable conditions for tea estates had led to massive clearance of grasslands and forest and depletion of timber. And this required massive labor to be invested into forest clearances. Psyche, in his biography of the Brahmaputra, the unquiet river, writes, "The total loss of timber," and I quote, "the total loss of timber and other vegetation cleared in the process have been enormous. Between 1870 and 1970, the clearance shifted 1.5 million hectares, 1/5 of the state's geographical area, from natural vegetation to agriculture and human settlement. Dense forest and woodland cover totaling as much as 720,000 hectares were cleared. Tropical broad-leaved humid species, 390,000 hectares, accounted for over half of the depletion in this category." And elsewhere he writes, "Large tracts of grassland and shrubland in the floodplains, which accounted for 475,000 hectares, were also cleared for jute and paddy cultivation." The tea plantation remained an enclave of accumulation and plunder, or environment, people's livelihood, and access to resources. The commodity produced on the slopes of Assam's highland employed indentured labor and supplied tea chests to Calcutta, the port enclave of the metropolitan economy, where it will be auctioned and transported to London, where it will be finally auctioned again. Interestingly, there was no auctioning until very recently in the city of Guwahati. In fact, I was looking at the 12 auctioning centers, and until very late, we didn't see anything other than Kolkata. So Siliguri comes in, and then you have, I think, you have Guwahati coming in much later, interestingly, which in fact supplied 50% or more of tea in the international market. And every time you have the auction and these places which get involved, the multiplier effect of that particular resource or the profit gets taken away from you. So anybody who has been a student of economics would understand that multiplier is very important for capital accumulation, for resource generation. While the resources are being created in the hills, in the plantation enclaves, in fact, the profits accrue somewhere else, miles and thousands of miles away. Is something which, in fact, was very crucial in order to explain as to why Assam could not really generate its own basis of dynamics of capital generation. The spatial structure and hierarchy for urban areas in Assam, and particularly along the Brahmaputra, both during the colonial phase and later, will show as to how very little built capital within the region for further investment and economic diversification occurred. I would like to conclude this section with another quote from Saikia's latest book, The Quest for Modern Assam. Assam has not departed much from the colonial pattern, and I quote here, "If India's large and medium capital had for the most part deserted Assam, its tea, timber, and petroleum industries still formed an enclave economy. Assam was hardly a beneficiary in the first few decades of India's industrialization." This validates what I was proposing and the kind of idea that I was invoking, the idea of Chattopadhyay and Raza. I, however, suggest that we must explore further, look at various facets of the working of commodities, capital, and environment, and of course, we geographers must pay attention to space, more particularly the places, because the spaces become something very, very undefined and ephemeral to several of our understanding. And this has to be done at the micro levels in relation to the neoliberal project. The dimension that I really want all of us to in fact pay attention on is the neoliberal project, of which all of us are increasingly a part. Now I come to the second part of my presentation. If I have got time, I think I've got another 20 minutes time. That is a look east policy and accumulation by disposition. The look east policy of Government of India has augured large-scale infrastructural development projects in the region. This will reduce the insularity and isolation from the rest of the country, as well as its linkages with Southeast Asia, enabling faster movements of goods, services, and people across. It is also expected to bring investment into the northeastern region, which will open new opportunities for growth and employment. This is again like, if I may be allowed to use the cliche called अच्छे दिन. पैसे आएंगे तो रेल भी बनेगी और रेल बनेगी तो investment भी होगा. But I was not in a position to really find any document either with the railways or with the Government of India to this effect. The focus, among other interventions that I would like to submit here, is largely on the railway project, and that's which I talked about. The hydrocarbon potential of the region is all very well known. And I have, although my work was primarily on the hydrocarbon, but here I'm not talking about hydrocarbon at all. Explorations in hydrocarbon potential of the region has already been completed and detailed project reports are awaited. Maybe it has already been submitted, but I have not had the opportunity to go through them. However, I would like to make certain observations and raise a few questions related to the environment and livelihoods of the people living particularly in the hills of Manipur, where I had the opportunity of carrying out field work in 2019 and speak to various stakeholders, particularly in Tamenglong area and various locations along the Jiribam-Imphal sector of the railway project. The areas visited by me are mainly comprising of subsistence farmers, raising various crops, mainly practice jhuming, although several communities have resorted to settled agriculture as well. They also transact in various forest produce and other produce from the streams, which include fish and sand. They also produce bananas, turmeric, and oranges for the market. There is a significant change, by the time that I was there, I could see that happening. People were not very poor and not very unhappy, in spite of the fact that 2019 we have seen a prolonged agitation, and that was the only window that we had after Bandhs, where we could go and spend some time in Tamenglong. Their fields and orchards, that means the fields and orchards of the Manipuri farmers in Tamenglong, largely depend on rain, which is normally good, although there was a general opinion that rains have reduced and its frequency have become far more erratic than ever before. Perhaps this was due to climate change, and interestingly, everywhere you talk to people, even the villager knew that climate change is knocking at the door. And that's a good alibi for all of us, because anything that happens around us, we take resource. Not that climate change is not real, but how many of us have really done an in-depth study of what are the kind of climate variability that is happening at the local level? Things may, if we look at it in the longer perspective, you'll find that things may have happened in a similar manner also in the past. But that's a nice way to, in fact, take our attention away from the real issues. What are the real issues? And that is where I would like to hint at. And the culmination of that could be seen in the Manipuri crisis that we have today in Manipur. Their fields and orchards largely depend on rain, which is normally good. Perhaps this is due to climate change, which has been experienced all over. People reported, and this is very important, people report that the quantity and flow of water in the streams and rivers have reduced considerably, and that the subsoil moisture on which their agriculture largely dependent, tumors basically they produce through subsoil moisture, which is trapped on the slopes, largely has also undergone significant change over a period of time, and more so during the last 1 decade or so. I started comparing the building of the railway project and what was really happening around that. Now, I have some details that I would like to share with you. Our initial observations regarding the loss of subsoil moisture propose a certain hypothesis, and these are hypotheses. I have not worked on them. This is something that students here and geographers, active geographers, I am an inactive geographer. I have taken off now doing theater, so I love storytelling and not do any serious work. So the hypotheses that we have are the following. There are 3 of them. The Jiribam-Imphal sector of the railways has constructed a number of tunnels, a few among them of considerable length. Some of them runs for miles. I mean, I was allowed to enter with some persuasion, and I could drive inside. and I could see the tunnels, which were almost 80% complete, flooded with water. Anytime there is an internal digging, you tend to disturb the natural aquifers. The water, in fact, starts gushing out. Tunneling has caused massive destruction of the underground aquifers and has allowed draining out of the subsoil moisture, the subsoil water on which the topsoil, the forest on top and the fields on top depended. So there was a visual evidence. I'm only saying this is by saying and staying and talking to people. I haven't done any in-depth study. And that would be perhaps, if at all I have time and resources, I could perhaps do that. There was a visual evidence that wherever the tunnels were constructed, that had caused massive damage to the surrounding areas by way of not only dumping, but also by way of loss of moisture. We could see that this is the tunnel and the topsoil is completely dry and the bamboos are really falling down. And elsewhere, just about in the neighborhood, it's lush green. So that was a visual evidence for me to in fact build some kind of hypothesis. So much so that the hill slopes where the tunnels existed were now unfit for agriculture or for forest regeneration. The nature of the forest cover too had undergone a change, as people reported. We looked into the environmental assessment reports and the documents related to the railway project, which we had to obtain through RTI. They would not easily give it us. It took nearly 7 to 8 months for us to in fact procure some of this. And to our dismay, we didn't find a single sentence on how tunneling as a technical intervention was likely to affect the underground water resources. Now, I can understand that the government can be naive. Our experts, our geographers, or maybe those who work on underground water or hydrologists also equally naive. I started looking at structural hydrology and papers on that, and I could find hardly any paper which really talked about tunneling and its impact on water. So therefore, it's taken for granted that as long as you are doing tunneling, and you do tunneling for a small length of space, it's all right. It has to be, it can always be taken care of. Some cost will have to be paid. But if you're doing it for nearly 24 such tunnels that I could see, I visited 7 to 8 such tunnels which were of various lengths. And this is what I came to know, that the scientific literature too was scant. And therefore, we are totally lost to understand as to how can we reflect upon the relationship between this development, which is in fact a massive project, railway project, the tunneling, and the livelihoods of the people. And that's where I rest this part of the presentation. The third part is about the conflicts. Now, in Tamenglong itself, the conflicts arose and it was going on for even before we reached there. It happened because the fact that people own resources or land in a communitarian mode. There is no personal private property out there, and therefore the headman of the village plays a very, very important role. And what we really found was that from one community to another, from one village to another, there was some kind of a game which was being played both by the administration and also by the corporate lobby which was working, And the corporate lobby was trying to, in fact, appease the headman of the village to sign a particular document. And they said it's absolutely harmless. All that you are is saying is that in case there is some potential which is found, you can perhaps, you can negotiate, you are prepared to negotiate with the government of India whether or not to allow any kind of extraction of mineral oil from there. You perhaps know that, a similar thing happened in Nagaland, and Nagaland completely. The people of Nagaland did not agree to doing this. So the next emphasis was Tamil, was Manipur. And that is where, the subtitle comes in, that what market is doing. Is it trying to really create a new kind of a line of divide? I could perhaps go through nearly about a dozen such cases, which in fact people are fighting against the local administration or between and among themselves, say between the headman and the rest of the villagers, because they were now seen at loggerheads. So you can see a kind of a community which has such a strong bondage, getting absolutely disintegrated. Why does this disintegration happen? And why does this disintegration happen in a manner in which, we talk about and the state and the judicial, this is not a comment on judiciary, but the judicial process also talks about 10%, 90% of space and population and so on and so forth. They have not even bothered to check as to what is the share of population in the hills and what is the share of population in the plains. But the line has been drawn. And the line has been drawn because you see the potential investment in the hills, and the hill is all community-owned resources. In order to in fact translate it into private resources, you need some kind of penetration, and this is not a reflection on any community, but Meitei being the community in the plains, they have interest in the landed property where investment is taking place, and this is where in fact we were in a position to see some kind of a tension. Now, it's another story that most of us keep reading, and this story is very genuine, that it is the cultural loss which also plays a very, very important role in this kind of, and in case of Assam, we know that culture was one of the most important central point when vis-a-vis the migrations, the immigrants, that they would be swamped by the Bengali speaking Muslims and so on and so forth, or maybe people who are coming from outside. Their grievances could be extremely genuine. But to what extent this is substantive? That's the point which I would like to raise here. Is this substantive? Because if I look at some of the parameters of culture and I work on that, say for example, I with the help of one of my students, I was in a position to see as to how many communities in the Northeast have really retained their own language and how many of them have switched over to another language. That means there has been a language shift, which in fact is an indication of some kind of a cultural hegemony, if at all you may call it. And I was in a position to see that it was very limited and confined only to a handful of small communities. Majorly it was with the Kacharis and with the Khasis. Elsewhere, the language retention is more than 80%. That means people who return their mother tongue as, say, X, Y, Z speakers, and belong to the same community, the data is available in the language tables, and I have scanned the 91 one because the 91 data was very significantly available in several classifications. And this is where, so while the cultural submergence of culture could be real, but is it substantive? That's the point which I would like to raise. The ethnic divide and dispossession from land and resources is the global capital looking for. And it has brought us to a situation where the state joins the corporate and remains silent. Is it not true that the state remained silent for nearly 8 months while Manipur was burning and continues to burn? Even on the day of election, you had some kind of a turmoil. Who shall make this choice? This brings us to examine the changing relationship between the citizens and the state, mediated and controlled by the global financial corporates. But I have no time or energy to further go ahead. So I leave you with this question. Thank you for your patient hearing. I hope I was in a position to communicate with the students sitting at the back. Don't remain backbenchers. Thank you very much.
So, thank you, Professor Sinha, for such a thoughtful and enlightening discussion presented before us. It is really very interesting, and we people who are living in Northeast, part and parcel of some areas within Northeast, we do not feel this kind of trip very much. But the lecture he has divided into three sections. First one dealing with the context. That means Northeast in the colonial and post-colonial India. He tried to see the position of Northeast during the colonial as well as the post-colonial India, and try to see the context, Northeast India in the context of India. Then the second part, development and development policies, and the third part, particularly the conflicts. I remember one very important essay by Professor Raja, Munish Raja, and someone was there. They wrote on the shifting of the economic centrality from continental India to the coastal India. There he referred to the term, he has also mentioned that and stressed on that also, that is the suction mechanism. The metropolis, then the satellite towns, cities, then the resource producing areas, the relation. So that has been very nicely discussed, and we also find that there is a great change in the spatial organization of society and economy in our state. Professor M.TAHER sir, he wrote extensively on this, but then from political economic perspective and political ecologic perspective, he did not look into these things. He simply actually tried to see Northeast India from geographical perspective simply, and he tried to estimate the population growth, particularly after census it is okay, but before census also he tried to estimate. He estimated that the first million population Northeast, actually the Northeast has the first million population in 1830. In 1830, the 7 states had 1 million people, then it increased to 4 million by 1901. It took about 70 years to increase Northeast India's population from 1 million to 4 million. Then, during a period of about 100 years, from 4 million it increased to about 45 million. Now we have, as per 2011 census, we have about 45 million people in Northeast, and very interestingly, in the Brahmaputra Valley we have half of the total population. We have about 22 to 23 million people in the Brahmaputra Valley. Brahmaputra Valley with only 56,000 square kilometer of area shares only 20% of the total area of Northeast, but in terms of population we have more than 50%. So you can very well imagine that the pressure of population on the resources. I think also he was referring to the tunnels constructed actually in the railway systems, particularly the track between Lamding to Silchar, then to Ziribam and all that. That is also very interesting, and also a lot of development works, road construction as well as this hydroelectric power generation projects are also coming up. What will happen ultimately to the ecology of this area, that is also very very doubtful.
60% of the hydroelectric projects are failed already.
Yes, that's true. So therefore, these things are very critical. And I remember one paper by Professor Sunil Munshi. I think it was actually instructed by Professor Raja to write, about the evolution of railway system in India. And Sunil Munshi, he wrote a very good paper on the historical evolution of this railway system in India. He was also referring to that. And it was really, if we get the actually final copy of this paper, it will be very good for us. It will actually raise number of questions as well as challenges, and some of the points may be debatable also. Anyway, I thank Professor Sinha for his very, very convincing and also illuminating kind of presentation that he has presented before us on Northeast India. He was referring to Professor A.B. Mukherjee also. Professor A.B. Mukherjee, he came to our department, university, and visited some places of Assam, Shillong and all that. And he wrote a paper in 1984, Northeast India, a distant view. He always told that I have not visited Northeast very thoroughly. I don't know about the ground reality of the communities and all that. I have a perception from my Punjab area, from different parts of India, and the cultural relation between the Northeast and Assam and India. And from my perspective, I have just written down all these things. It was really very, very nice. A man with a very good theoretical background and theoretical understanding of what is going on in our state, India, in regions and in the globally particularly. More eta kotha monot pore. Edin amar Goswami dadai ekhon mane mok ekhon ani kitab dekhuaise. David Harvey kitab. Amar okol lora choli bilake David Harvey namto bohote shuna nai. Aru geography manu bilake David Harvey bor bhoy kore asolote. Bhoy kore mane ei birat iman jotil kotha likhe. Iman এইবিলাক কথা আমি বুজিম কেনেকৈ, আৰু ইট ইজ ৰিয়েলি ডিফিকাল্ট টু আণ্ডাৰষ্টেণ্ড। আমাৰ যে 1969 যিখন প্ৰথম কিতাপ তেওঁ লিখিছিলে, মানে এখন কি আমাৰ ডেভিড হাৰ্ভে 69 ফাৰ্ষ্ট বুক এক্সপ্লেনেশ্যন ইন জিঅ'গ্ৰাফি, সেইখন অলপমান ঠিক আছে মোটামুটি, সেইবিলাক অলপ বুজিব পাৰি, কিন্তু লাহে লাহে বৰ জটিল। আৰু তেওঁ নিজে কৈছিলে, তেওঁ তাত প্ৰিফেচত লিখিছে, আই থেংক দি এডিটৰ্ছ হু ৰিজেক্টেড মাই পেপাৰ্ছ. I wrote papers on the correlation and regression, but I did not understand that whether X regresses upon Y or Y regresses upon X. তেওঁ কৈছে যে মোৰ এইবিলাক যদি গ্ৰহণ কৰি পেলাই পাব্লিছ কৰি দিলেহেঁতেন মই মানে বিপদগামী হ'লোহেঁতেন। মোক তেওঁলোকক ধন্যবাদ তেনেকুৱাকৈ দিছে। তাৰপিছত যিবিলাক জটিল পাৰ্টিকুলাৰলি নিঅ' লিবাৰেলিজিমৰ ওপৰত যিখন তেওঁ কিতাপ কৰিছে, সেইখন কিতাপে গোটেই ৱৰ্ল্ড যিটো গ্ল'বেল ইকনমি, গ্ল'বেল পলিটিক্সৰ কথাটো বৰ উদঙাই দিছে। গতিকে এখেতে এদিন কৰিছে কি মোক গতিকে দাদাই এদিন কিতাপখন লৈ আহিছে, মোৰ ওচৰতে থাকোঁ, এইখন দেখিছেনে ভাগৱতী বুলি কৈছে। আচলতে মই নেদেখা বুলি ক'লে মই বিৰাট লাজ পালোহেঁতেন। তেখেত ইংলিছৰ প্ৰফেচাৰ আৰু হাৰ্ভেৰ কিতাপখন লৈ মোৰ ওচৰলৈকে আহি গৈছে। মই লাকিলি এইখন কিতাপ আমি দেখিছোঁ আৰু আমাৰ ডিপাৰ্টমেণ্টত মই নিজে এটা কপি আনিছিলোঁ পষ্ট মডাৰ্নিজিমৰ ওপৰত। পষ্ট মডাৰ্নিজিমৰ ওপৰত এজন ইংৰাজীৰ অধ্যাপকে, তেখেতে অৱশ্যে মানে খুব ভাল পঢ়ুৱৈ আৰু কিতাপৰ ভাল সংৰক্ষক, কিতাপ কিনে, ঘৰত এটা ভাল লাইব্ৰেৰী আছে। তাৰপিছত মোক দেখুৱাই পেলাই মোক সুধিছে যে আপুনি কিবা এইখিনি পঢ়িছেনে? মই কৈছোঁ পঢ়িছোঁ, কিন্তু মই ধৰিব পৰা নাই আকৌ আচলতে। তেতিয়া পষ্ট মডাৰ্নিজিমৰ আইডিয়াটো নতুনকৈ আছে। গতিকে তাৰপিছত মই লাহে লাহে অলপ পঢ়িলেও মই এতিয়া ক'ম, মই ডেভিড হাৰ্ভেক দেখাও পাইছোঁ, পিটাৰ হেগেটৰ ছাত্ৰ, প্ৰফেচাৰ হেগেটৰ তেওঁ ষ্টুডেণ্ট আছিলে, এতিয়াতো এন্থ্ৰপলজিৰ এটা মানে প্ৰফেচাৰ হিচাপে কাম কৰিছে। এনিৱে মই এতিয়াও সাংঘাতিক ধৰণে তেখেতৰ কথাবিলাক পঢ়িবলৈ ভয় কৰোঁ। মই নিজে কিন্তু চিঠি লিখি পেলাই তেখেতৰ পৰা এটা বাণ্ডুল অফ পেপাৰ্ছ তেওঁ লিখা মোলৈকে পঠাই দিছিলে। মই এতিয়াও সেইবিলাক ভয়ে থৈ দিওঁ, আৰু মই সদায় পিছুৱাই থৈ দিম বুলি, পিছত পঢ়িম বুলি থৈ দিওঁ। ইমান জটিল আৰু ইমান ৰেফাৰেঞ্চ থাকে, এই পিছত পঢ়িম বুলি ভাবোঁতে মোৰ আৰু ঠিকমতে পঢ়া নহ'ল। আই এম ভেৰি হেপী ডেট প্ৰফেচাৰ শশীদানন্দ সিনহা ভেৰি ডাইৰেক্টলি হি হেজ ৰেফাৰ্ড টু দি ৱৰ্কশ্বপ। আৰু ডেভিড হাৰ্ভেৰ কথাবিলাক আমি যদি আনিব নোৱাৰোঁ, তেতিয়াহ'লে আমি ছ'চাইটি, ইকনমি এণ্ড কালচাৰ, আমি গোটেই ৱৰ্ল্ড, ইণ্ডিয়া নাইবা এনি পাৰ্ট অফ দি ৱৰ্ল্ড ভেৰি ডিফিকাল্ট টু আণ্ডাৰষ্টেণ্ড। গতিকে খুব ভাল লাগিল। মই আৰু দীঘলীয়াকৈ নকওঁ, মই এই বিষয়ে বৰ বেছি নাজানো, মই তেখেতক ধন্যবাদ দিলোঁ আৰু তেখেতে আৰু এটা কথা মই ইয়াতে স্বীকাৰ কৰোঁ যে কিমান কষ্ট কৰি এটা বক্তৃতা দিয়াৰ কাৰণে আহিছে সাধাৰণতে সেইফালে ছবি তবি বেছি দেখুওৱা নাই ছবি দেখুৱালে কষ্ট অলপ কমে তেখেতে ছবি তবি বাদ দি পেলাই কষ্টই কৰিছে আচলতে আৰু এইখন পেপাৰ যেতিয়া আমাক ফুল পেপাৰ তেখেতে আমাক দিব আৰু এইখন পেপাৰ পাব্লিছ কৰিব পাৰিম তেতিয়া আমি খুব বেনিফিটেড হ'ম বুলি মই ধন্যবাদ ভাবিলোঁ আৰু আপোনাক নমস্কাৰ জনালোঁ এতিয়া আমাৰ অকণমান কেইটামান প্ৰাইজ এণ্ড এৱাৰ্ডছ আমাৰ তাহেৰ ছাৰৰ আমাৰ যিটো কমিটি আছে তাহেৰ ছাৰৰ ফেমিলিয়ে আমাক অকণমান এইটো ক্ষেত্ৰত সহায় কৰি থাকে গতিকে প্ৰাইজ এণ্ড এৱাৰ্ডছ from our committee, I think it will be announced by Professor Bimal Kaur. Please.
Honorable President, esteemed guests on the dais and of the dais, including our beloved students and research scholars. So we are almost towards the end of our today's program, but we have some few more agenda with us, including a release of one book by one of the students of late Professor Tahir sir. So before we go to that agenda, we have to announce the recipients for Professor M.TAHER Innovate Motivate Fellowship for the year 2023-24. And as I told, as a part of this fellowship, actually we have two fellowships every year, one for postgraduate student, another for doctoral student from the Department of Geography, Guwahati University. But this time the committee decided to give away two prizes to postgraduate students of the department and to one doctoral student. And it is already announced they are getting the fellowship right from the middle of probably 2023. They have been receiving their fellowship at the rate of 25,000 per year, 2 years for postgraduate student, 3 years for doctoral student. They are with us probably. I have invited them. Not only announcement, to get them introduced with our guests, invited guests and others present here, including the family members of late Professor Tahir sir. So for the recipients for the year 2023-24 include Priyanshi Goswami. Priyanshi Goswami, you come forward. She is presently doing her MMSc course in second semester. Priyanshi Goswami, second semester student from the Department of Geography, and you see here. And second one is Sri Bhrigu Kumar Kolita. Bhrigu Kumar Kolita, he is also from second semester, Department of Geography, Guwahati University. And Sri Abhijit Sarkar, from among the doctoral students. So these are the newly awarded recipients for Professor M.TAHER Motivate Fellowship for the year 2023-24 as a token of our appreciation and love, wishing them all the best in their studies and research. We want to give away a packet of books for your further progress. So please go ahead. So this will be in this way. They will be provided with this token of appreciation and love to these recipients from the Professor M.TAHER Memorial family, from the family side. And we have Professor A.N.M. Irshad Ali sir, who is representing Professor M.TAHER family today. So I would like to request him to give away the packets of books to the recipients, starting with Priyanshi Goswami. From second semester. Next is Bhrigu Kumar Kolita. Next is Abhijit Sarkar. He is a doctoral student. After his post-graduation, he joined for his research work in the department. Again, we'll be inviting him because he has completed his post-graduation also, having the fellowship from Professor M.TAHER Memorial Committee. So we want to, we want to give away the certificates to the recipients of Professor M.TAHER Motivate Fellowship who completed their respective courses recently. This time we have 3 fellowship holders who could complete their courses successfully after receipt of this Professor M.TAHER Motivate Fellowship during the period 2017 to 2020. They include Dr. M. Vijay Singh. He completed his PhD with fellowship, with this fellowship, Professor M.TAHER Motivate Fellowship. He is from Manipur. He is invited but he could not come. He will be given the certificate later on. And Abhijit Sarkar again, while pursuing his postgraduate course in the department, he was again awarded with this fellowship. So you can receive the certificate from Professor A.K. Bhagwati sir, President. And Parikshit Nath, are you present? So Parikshit Nath is also absent. Oh, he is not well, that's why he could not come. Parikshit Nath could not come to receive the certificate today because of his ill health. So anyway, thank you very much. Wish you all the best and congratulations to all the participants of Professor M.TAHER Motivate Fellowship. Thank you very much.
Now, I request Professor Ishad Ali to speak a few words because he was very close to Professor Taher sir, particularly when Professor Taher was the chief editor, editing the Bishwakosh that time. I was also there, and Professor Ishad Ali was his joint editor. He was very close to him, therefore a lot of experience, lot of knowledge about Professor Taher, but then we don't have much time. So I request Professor Ishad Ali to speak briefly on his. আপুনি হ'লে আৰু হৈ যাব আৰু অলপ ফেমিলিৰ কথাও ক'ব আৰু তেখেতৰ পৰিয়ালৰ কথাও অকণমান ক'ব। আচ্ছা
উপস্থিত ৰাইজ, মই আজি ইয়াত থিয় হ'বলগীয়া কথাটো 1950ৰ দশকতে সম্ভৱতঃ থিৰাং কৰা হৈছিল। মই তেতিয়া LP স্কুলত পঢ়োঁ। আমাৰ ঘৰলৈ ওখ-পাখ মানুহ এজন, নাকটো ধুনীয়া জোঙা, মোৰ মোমাইদেউ যথেষ্ট চুটি চাপৰ তফাজ্জুল আলী, তেওঁৰ লগত আমাৰ মঙলদৈ ঘৰলৈ যায়। আমি গম পাওঁ পাছত যে তেখেত তাহেৰ, M. তাহেৰ মামাৰ খুব ভাল বন্ধু। M. তাহেৰে গীত লিখে, মামাই সুৰ দিয়ে, তফাজ্জুল আলীয়ে, আৰু সেইবিলাক আকাশবাণী গুৱাহাটীৰ পৰা ব্ৰডকাষ্ট হয়। গতিকে সম্ভৱতঃ সেই তেতিয়াই আজি যে মই ইয়াত থিয় হ'ব লাগিব এই কথাটো লিপিবদ্ধ কৰা হৈছিলে। বাইটি আছে, মই ছাৰৰ পৰিয়ালৰ নিচিনা হৈ গ'লোঁ। চণ্ডীগড় ইউনিভাৰ্চিটিৰ পৰা, বিশ্ববিদ্যালয়ৰ পৰা যেতিয়া মই গুৱাহাটী বিশ্ববিদ্যালয়ত চাকৰি কৰিবলৈ আহিলোঁ, ইয়াত যোগদান কৰিলোঁ। তাৰপিছত একেটা বিল্ডিঙতে আকৌ তাহেৰ ছাৰৰ লগত বহিবলগীয়া হ'ল জিঅ'গ্ৰাফী, এনথ্ৰপ'লজি আৰু জিঅ'লজি একেলগে। মোৰ চাকৰি শেষ হ'ল। মই তেতিয়া তাহেৰ ছাৰক কাকা বুলি মাতোঁ আৰু মোক ঘৰুৱা নামেৰে মাতে, ইছাদ বুলি নামাতে। তো মই ক'লোঁ যে কাকা মইতো চাকৰি শেষ হ'ল, যাব লাগিব। ক'ত যাবা তুমি? যাব লাগিব আৰু ক'ৰবাত। নহয় নহয়, তুমি মোৰ ঘৰৰ ওপৰত থাকিবা, ভাড়া দিবা কিবা এটা, ওপৰত থাকিবা। আকৌ একেলগ হ'লোঁ। তাৰ পাছত আহিল বিশ্বকোষৰ যুদ্ধ। 8 আৰু 9 সংখ্যা দুটা। 5 বছৰ কিমান কষ্ট কৰিব পাৰে ছাৰে, তেতিয়াই বুজি পাইছিলোঁ যে প্ৰকৃত এজন শিক্ষক আৰু তাহেৰ ছাৰ কি হ'ব পাৰে। চণ্ডীগড়ৰ পৰা আহি মই কি এটা সংযোগ, যিটো ঘৰত থাকিব ল'লোঁ শান্তিপুৰত, সেই ঘৰটো আছিল চেলিমা বাইটিৰ ঘৰৰ একেবাৰে সন্মুখত। আকৌ বাইটিক লগ পালোঁ। সেইকাৰণে পৰিয়ালৰ হৈ দুটামান কথা ক'লোঁ, কিন্তু কেইটামান কথা মই নক'লে নহ'ব। বিশ্বকোষৰ 5 বছৰৰ অভিজ্ঞতাই আমাৰ যিটো টিম অফ ৱৰ্কাৰ্ছ, প্ৰফেচৰ ভাগৱতী আছিল এই টিমত, আমি যি শিক্ষা পালোঁ সেয়া আৰু জীৱনত কাহানিও পাহৰিব নোৱাৰিছিলোঁ। মই বিশ্বাস কৰোঁ যে তাহেৰ ছাৰে নিজৰ ভাগে যিবিলাক কাম কৰিছিলে, মই এদিন সুধিছিলোঁ, ছাৰ আপুনি ইমান কষ্ট কৰে, আমি নোৱাৰোঁ দেই বুলি মোক কৈছিলে। মুকুল, যিটো মোৰ ঘৰত মতৰ নাম মুকুল, এই আমি যে ছ'চিয়েল জিঅ'গ্ৰাফাৰ, এনথ্ৰপ'লজিষ্ট, ছ'চিয়লজিষ্ট আটাইবিলাকে মানুহৰ বিষয়ে অধ্যয়ন কৰিছোঁ। কি কাৰণে জানা? বুলি কি কাৰণে কৈছোঁ? টু ফাইণ্ড আউট দ্য মিনিং অফ হিউমেন বিং। এইখিনি কৈ মই মোৰ বক্তব্য সামৰণি মাৰিলোঁ। ধন্যবাদ।
সভাপতিৰ অনুমতিক্ৰমে মই এটা কথা কৈ যাওঁ, আমাৰ ল'ৰা ছোৱালীয়ে জানিব লাগে। ছাৰ খুব হিচাপী মানুহ আছিলে আৰু সময়ানুৱৰ্তিতা তেখেতৰ স্বভাৱতে আছিলে। মানে ইমান হিচাপ মই তেনেকুৱা মানুহ পোৱা নাই। আৰু অধ্যাপক অন্নদাচৰণ ভাগৱতী ছাৰে মোক 3 বাৰ এটা কথা কৈছিলে। তেখেতসকল একেলগে নিউজিলেণ্ডত আছিলে, একেলগে গৱেষক ছাত্ৰ আছিলে। মই তেজপুৰত থাকোঁতেও এ চি ভাগৱতী ছাৰে মোক সেইটো কথা আকৌ কৈছিলে। আমি হাঁহো। তাৰমানে ছাৰ ৰাতি ডিপাৰ্টমেণ্টৰ অকলেণ্ড বিশ্ববিদ্যালয়ৰ পৰা তেখেতে PhD কৰিছে। ৰাতি মানে তেখেতে ডিপাৰ্টমেণ্টত বহুত ৰাতিলৈকে থাকে, 10:30, 11টালৈকে থাকে। তাৰপিছত তেওঁ য'ত থাকে তালৈ বোধকৰো 0.5 কিলোমিটাৰ 1 কিলোমিটাৰমান দূৰ হ'ব। ছাৰে হিচাপ কৰি দেখিলে যে খোজকাঢ়ি গ'লে 22 মিনিট লাগে, গতিকে ছাৰে দৌৰা আৰম্ভ কৰিলে। ৰাতি 11টা বজাত বিৰাট দৌৰ দিছে। তে পিছে পিছে কিছু মানুহ আহিছে, তেওঁ ইফালে চাইডে পুলিচ। ৰাতি তেনেকৈ দৌৰিলেতো পুলিচ আহিব, নিউজিলেণ্ডৰ পুলিচ। তেতিয়া কিবা এটা গণ্ডগোল লাগি আছিলে। তাৰপিছত তেখেতক থানালৈ লৈ গ'ল। তাৰপিছত তাতে আইডেণ্টিটি কাৰ্ড দেখুৱাই পেলাই কোনোমতে বাচিলে। মোৰ তেতিয়া মনত পৰিছে এখন কিতাপ 1979 চনত এই নন্দ তালুকদাৰে মোক দি থৈ গৈছিলে। নন্দ তালুকদাৰে আকৌ অসম সাহিত্য সভাৰ যি সভাপতি হয় তেখেতসকলৰ বিষয়ে এখন কিতাপ লিখে। এখন কিতাপ আছিলে প্ৰসন্নলাল চৌধুৰীৰ বিষয়ে। যে প্ৰসন্নলাল চৌধুৰী, তেওঁ প্ৰথম কেইটামান অনুচ্ছেদতে আছে যে শিশু প্ৰসন্নলালক সৰুতে আমাৰ বিশেষকৈ গাঁওবিলাকত এই পাতিৰ ওপৰত এই কেঁচুৱাটোক মানে ভালকৈ তেল চেল দি পেলাই থৈ দিয়ে, ৰ'দত দি থৈ দিয়ে। এই প্ৰসন্নলাল চৌধুৰীকো তেনেকৈ ৰ'দত দি থৈ দিছিলে। ক'ৰবাৰ পৰা শিয়াল এটা আহি পেলাই তেওঁক নিবলৈ চালে। এটা মানুহে গোটেই হুলস্থুল লগাই দিলে, শিয়ালটো গুচি গ'ল। তাৰপিছত নন্দ তালুকদাৰে তেখেতে এটা টিপ্পনী দিছে শিয়াল বপুৰাই সিদিনাই শিশু প্ৰসন্নলালক লৈ যোৱা হ'লে আজি আমি তেখেতক অসম সাহিত্য সভাৰ সভাপতি ৰূপে নাপালোহেঁতেন। তেখেতে নিউজিলেণ্ডৰ পুলিচে যদি আমাৰ তাহেৰ ছাৰক তেনেকৈ লৈ গ'লহেঁতেন আজি আমাক তেখেতক নাপালোহেঁতেন। ধন্যবাদ।
বহুত ধন্যবাদ। এতিয়া release of book on regional geography of the world authored by Professor Jyotimoni Bordoloi. Professor Kore অকমান এই বিষয়ে ক'ব।
So, Honorable President, invited dignitaries on the dais and of the dais, and my dear student friends. So, as per the agenda, we have a release of a book on regional geography of the world, which is authored by one of the alumni of the Department of Geography, Professor Jyotimoni Bordoloi, who is a retired professor and head Department of Geography, Moran College. She was a direct student of Professor Taher sir. So we are very happy that she could complete this book very recently, and she requested us, including our Taher madam, to include release of this book in this function. Accordingly, we have included this particular agenda in this event, and I would like to now invite Professor Jyotimoni Bordoloi. She is 2 years senior to me. She is my elder sister. To speak a few words, 1 minute, because we are running short of time, about the book, and I think we would request, as per her desire, Professor A.K. Bhagwati sir to release the book. Thank you.
মই উঠাম দাদা, আপুনি নালাগিব দিয়া শুনিব যিকেইজন হ'ব ঠিক আছে, তুমি এখন লোৱা আৰু আপোনালোক দুজনে ধৰক। অঁ ভাল। অলপমান কৈ দিয়া।
Honorable President, sir. Respected Goswami sir, respected Sinha sir, and the distinguished guests on the dais, invitees, and my dear student friends. I'm honored and humble to stand here. And at the very outset, I would like to thank the organizing committee, as the committee has given me such a wonderful chance to release my first book on regional geography. So thank you from the core of my heart. Actually, my words are quite inadequate to say anything about the great person, the great teacher, Professor M.TAHER, a doyen of Indian geography, one of the eminent geographer of entire country. And I consider myself lucky enough because I was a teacher of that great personality, that great teacher. His brilliant deliberations, an adroit and amazing method of teaching, actually able to conquer the heart of each and every student of Taher sir's. I had a keen desire to do something for this great personality, for this great teacher. And I cherished the idea for a completely long period of time, more than several decades, 3 or 4 decades like that. After that, I get the answer, and finally, this book is the result. This is the first volume, Regional Geography, volume of Regional Geography, and I decided to finish it in 3 different volumes. Regarding the book, I must say one thing, that regional geography. As you all know that geography has already reached such a high level, and it includes so many other branches of science. So I don't know how much this descriptive geography is now relevant. Because all of us, we have our mobile handset in our hand, and whenever we want to know anything about any country in any corner of the world, we just have to type the name, and within a fraction of a second, we will be engulfed with so many different information, colloquial information. But I do it because it is my passion. And actually, main thing is that it is because of the inspiration of sir. Because of the inspiration of sir and Taher sir's brilliant deliberation and his way of teaching. I learned everything, how to be a good teacher, and I learned the art of a good teacher, learned the art of teaching, learned the art of ABC of teaching from Taher sir. Anyway, as Professor Bimalkar requests me not to say more than that, I request all of you, and at the same time, I want to recall a few teachers of my, who are the founder, who are the pillar of Geography Department of Guwahati University, Professor S.P. Das sir, and Professor M.TAHER Barthakur sir, and Professor Taher sir. These 3 are the main pillars on which the Department of Geography, Guwahati University is based. Anyway, once again, I would like to thank organizing committee and all who are present here. That's all. Thank you.
So, thank you very much. Writing such a book on the geography of the world is really very difficult task. তেওঁ এগৰাকী ভাল শিক্ষয়িত্ৰী মই জানো, আৰু ছাৰৰ লগত মানে যিটো বৌদ্ধিক সম্পৰ্ক হয়তো খুব ভালদৰে আছিলে, আৰু ছাৰৰ পৰা বড় ইনস্পিৰেশ্যন পাই পেলাই তেখেতে এই কিতাপখন প্ৰিপেয়াৰ কৰিছে। কিন্তু এনেকুৱা কি কিতাপ এখন বাস্তৱ ক্ষেত্ৰত ভালকৈ প্ৰিপেয়াৰ কৰাটো কিন্তু সহজসাধ্য কথা নহয়, বৰ ডিফিকাল্ট। আৰু এতিয়া মানে ৱৰ্ল্ড জিঅ'গ্ৰাফী বুলি ক'লে সেই আগৰ পুৰণা সেই কথাবিলাক আৰু ডেডলি ষ্টেম্পৰ সেই সময়ৰ কথাবিলাক নাই, এতিয়া গোটেই মানে পৃথিৱীৰ গোটেই অৰ্ডাৰটো চেঞ্জ হৈ গৈছে। গতিকে তথাপিও যিয়ে নহওক এটা ডাঙৰ চেষ্টা কৰিছে তেওঁ, বোধহয় আফটাৰ ৰিটায়াৰমেণ্ট তেওঁ এই কামটো হাতত লৈ পেলাই কৰিছে, আমি ধন্যবাদ জনালোঁ। আৰু আজি ছাৰৰ প্ৰতি থকা শ্ৰদ্ধাৰ কাৰণে তেওঁ এই সুযোগটো লৈছে, ইয়াত আমিও ভাল পাইছোঁ, সেইটো ফালৰ পৰা তেওঁক ধন্যবাদ জনালোঁ। আৰু ভৱিষ্যতে যাতে তেওঁ আকৌ ইতিমধ্যে কৈছে ভলিউম 1, আৰু লাহে লাহে, আৰু মই লগে লগে এটা কথা কওঁ, যেতিয়া লিখি পেলাই কিবা এটা বস্তু ক'ৰবাত উপস্থাপন কৰা যায়, আমি 10 বাৰ সাৱধান হ'ব লাগিব। কওঁতে বেলেগ কথা, পঢ়াওঁতে বেলেগ কথা, কিন্তু লিখি পেলাই এটা পাৰ্মানেণ্ট যেতিয়া ছেপ এটা দিব কথাৰ, খুব সাৱধান হৈ যাতে কামটো কৰে, সেই মই আশাটো ৰাখিলোঁ। আৰু এটা কথা, আমাৰ এই ডক্টৰ শৰৎ ফুকন ডাঙৰীয়া আমাৰ সভাত আহিছিলে, তেখেতৰ সহধৰ্মিনী সুপ্ৰীতি ফুকন আৰু শৰৎ ফুকনে এইখন দি হিষ্টৰিকেল এটলাছ অফ আছাম, এই এখন মানে আপোনাৰ আছাম ইন মেপছ, আৰু কিবা কিবি লিখিছেও হিষ্টৰিকেল এটলাছ গতিকে হিষ্টৰিকেল এটলাছ বুলি ক'লে খুব আচলতে খুব ইম্পৰ্টেণ্ট আচলতে আৰু আমাৰ হিষ্টৰিকেল জিঅ'গ্ৰাফিত আমাৰ গোটেই নৰ্থ ইষ্টাৰ্ণ ৰিজনটো ভেৰি পুৰ ইয়াতে আমাৰ হিষ্টৰিকেল জিঅ'গ্ৰাফিত মানে আমি লিখাই নাই আমাৰ তাহেৰ ছাৰ আৰু মানে নৰেন ভট্ট ছাৰে দে ৰোট ওৱান আৰ্টিকল ওৱান পেপাৰ অন দি প্ৰাগজ্যোতিষপুৰ ডেট ৱাজ এ পিয়'ৰলি হিষ্টৰিকেল জিঅ'গ্ৰাফিকেল পেপাৰ আৰু তাৰ বাহিৰে আমাৰ ইয়াতে সেই চেষ্টা আমাৰ নাই কিন্তু আমাৰ কিন্তু এইটো এটা ভেৰি পটেঞ্চিয়েল এৰিয়া ফ্ৰম দি হিষ্টৰিকেল জিঅ'গ্ৰাফিকেল পইণ্ট অফ ভিউ গতিকে তেওঁ এটা প্ৰচেষ্টা কৰিছে মই ইয়াতে দেখুওৱাৰ কাৰণটো হ'ল তেখেতে মোক এইখন উপহাৰ দিছে দেখুওৱাৰ কাৰণটো হ'ল যে আমি এইখন থৰলি চাব লাগে আমি চাব লাগে আৰু এক্সামিন কৰিব লাগে আৰু ক'ৰবাত ভুল ত্ৰুটি কিবা ৰৈ গ'ল কিবা থাকি গ'ল এনেকুৱা কথা আমি পঢ়িলেহে গম পাম আৰু পাৰ্টিকুলাৰলি মাই ষ্টুডেণ্ট ফ্ৰেণ্ডছ আমাৰ ছাত্ৰ ছাত্ৰীসকলে যাতে এইখন অকণমান চোৱাৰ ব্যৱস্থা কৰে আৰু আমাৰ ডিপাৰ্টমেণ্টৰ লাইব্ৰেৰীত দুটামান কপি আনিলে আমাৰ সকলোৱে আমি গম পাম যিয়ে নহওক আমাৰ জিঅ'গ্ৰাফীৰ তেখেত আমাৰ ডিপাৰ্টমেণ্টৰ ছাত্ৰ আছিলে ভাগৱতী আৰু তাহেৰ ছাৰ গোস্বামী ছাৰৰ লগতো খুব ভাল সম্পৰ্ক আৰু পুলিচ অফিচাৰ হৈ পেলাই তেখেতে SP আছিলে পুলিচ অফিচাৰ হোৱাৰ স্বত্তেও তেখেতে যে এই চেষ্টাটো কৰিছে তাতে সেইটো আমাৰ কাৰণে ভাল কথা কিন্তু এটা কথা সদায় মনত ৰাখিব লাগে আমি আমাৰ তাহেৰ ছাৰৰ ক্ষেত্ৰতো আমি এই কথাটো দেখা পাইছিলোঁ বা আমাৰ গোস্বামী ছাৰৰ ক্ষেত্ৰতো আমি তেখেত সন্মুখত আছে কাৰণে কৈছোঁ যে লেখাৰ ক্ষেত্ৰত খুব মানে তেখেতসকল খুব সাৱধান সেইকাৰণে বহুত ক্ষেত্ৰত আমি যিমান আশা কৰোঁ যে আশা কৰা হিচাপত সিমান পৰিমাণে তেখেতসকলে লিখাও নাই আমি যিটো আশা কৰোঁ তাৰ কাৰণটোৱে হ'ল যে তেখেতসকলে এটা মানে লিখিত আকাৰত যেতিয়া এটা বস্তু দিব সেইটো যাতে সদায় এটা স্থায়ী ৰূপত আৰু শুদ্ধ ৰূপত থাকে সেই কথাটো মনত ৰাখে কাৰণেই তেখেতসকলে তৎক্ষণাত যধে মধে নিলিখে এইটো বৰ আমাৰ লেখকসকলৰ কাৰণে এটা ডাঙৰ মানে লেচন আমি মনত ৰাখিব লাগে ছাত্ৰ ছাত্ৰীসকলে এইখন চাব বুলি মই আশা কৰিলোঁ আৰু এই কিতাপ সম্পৰ্কীয় কথাখিনি আমি ইয়াতে ৰাখি এতিয়া আমাৰ ইয়াতে কেইবাজনো বিজ্ঞ মানুহ আছে মই তেখেতসকলৰ মাজৰ পৰা কোনোবা দুই এজনে যদি দুই এষাৰ ক'ব খোজে তেতিয়াহ'লে আমি শুনিবলৈ ইচ্ছুক নাম দিয়া আছে তাকেতো নামটো দিয়া নাই আমি নাম দিয়া নাই গতিকে গোস্বামী ছাৰে যদি আৰু অসুবিধা নাপায় আৰু গোস্বামী ছাৰৰ বাওঁফালে এখেত তৌফিক ৰহমান ডাঙৰীয়া আছে তেখেতসকল দুজনৰ মানে মুখ চুখো প্ৰায় একে নিচিনা আৰু দুয়োজনে আহি পেলাই অকণ কৈ গ'লে ভাল পাম আৰু গোস্বামী ছাৰ ফাৰ্ষ্ট আপুনি যে ইয়ালৈকে আহিবনে তাত মাইকটো তাতে দিম মানে গোস্বামী ছাৰ সদায় ধেমেলীয়া মানুহ কিন্তু আৰু আজিতো আৰু বেছি সময় নহ'ব তথাপি ছাৰৰ লগতো একেই লখিমপুৰৰ ছাৰৰ ঘৰ আৰু তাহেৰ ছাৰৰ ঘৰৰ একেবাৰে লগালগি ছাৰ
আটাইলৈকে নমস্কাৰ জনাইছোঁ আমাৰ ইয়াত বিশিষ্ট যিসকল অতিথি আছে তেখেতসকলক মই মোৰ প্ৰণাম জনাইছিলোঁ বহু কথা শুনিলোঁ আৰু অত্যন্ত গধুৰ আৰু অত্যন্ত মনোগ্ৰাহী এটা আজি মই বক্তৃতা শুনিলোঁ তাতকৈ মই বহুদিন মই ভাল কথা এনেই পঢ়িছোঁ বহুত কিন্তু শুনা নাই স্বচক্ষে কাৰোবাৰ মুখত এটা খুব ভাল গৱেষণামূলক তত্ত্বৰ ওপৰত কোৱা শুনা নাই আজি শুনিলোঁ ছ' মাছ থেংকফুল টু ইউ ফৰ এন এক্সেলেণ্ট ৱে বহু কথা মনত খেলে এই টানেলবোৰ খান্দিলে মোৰ মনত ভিৰভিৰাই লাগে এইটো কৰিলে এইবোৰ জানো ষ্টাডি কৰা হ'ল জানো ইয়াৰ ইম্পেক্ট এছেছমেণ্ট হ'ল জানো আজি তেখেতে এইটো উলিয়াইছে মই কৈছোঁ এইবোৰে কাৰোবাৰ মনত যাতে চুৱে এই বহু কথা হৈছে যিবোৰ নজনা কথাবোৰ মানুহবোৰে ধৰি লয় এইবোৰ হৈছে বুলি তাত এটা চেপ্টাৰে আছে এইটো বাই ল আমাৰ আইনমতে সেইবোৰ চাব লাগিব আৰু সেইটোৰ কাৰণে কিন্তু এইবোৰ চব শ্বৰ্টকাট কৰি দিয়ে গোটেইবোৰ আৰু এইটো ভয়ানক কথা কিন্তু এইটো কথা কৰোঁ গতিকে মই খুব আজি অন্তৰৰ পৰা খুব ভাল পাইছোঁ আহুৰ কৰি আছিলোঁ গাটো অলপ ভাল নাছিলে কিন্তু আহি পেলাই মোৰ এনেই আছে তাহেৰ ছাৰৰ প্ৰতি শ্ৰদ্ধা জনাব ঠিকেই আছে আৰু দ্বিতীয় কথা এই যে হেৰিটো শুনিলোঁ গোস্বামীৰ কথা মই নকওঁ তেখেতক সদায় লগ পাওঁ ভাল পাওঁ কিন্তু এখেতৰ লেকচাৰটো শুনি আজি মই অভিভূত হ'লোঁ বৰ ভাল পাইছোঁ ইমান জ্ঞান গধুৰ ইমান চিন্তাশীল বক্তৃতা ইমান দূৰৰ পৰা আহি পেলাই আমাক কৈ গ'ল সেইটো এটা আৰু তাহেৰ ছাৰ মানুহজনো তেনেকুৱা একেধৰণে আছিলে ছাৰ মানুহজন ইমান ভাল মনৰ এজন মানুহ তেখেত মোক আচলতে দাদাৰ নিচিনা মোৰ এজন শিক্ষাগুৰু ঠিকেই তাৰ আগতে তেওঁক মই এজন নেইবাৰ হিচাপে মোৰ একে ঠাইৰে মোৰ ঘৰৰ পৰা 2 কিলোমিটাৰ আঁতৰত গাঁও খুটাকটীয়া গাঁৱৰ ফালে গ'লেই তেখেতৰ ঘৰ পায় আমি সৰুতে মনত আছে একেবাৰে সৰু থাকোঁতেই আমি বেয়া কাম ভালকৈ ভাল পঢ়া শুনা নকৰিলে এজন মানুহৰ কথা খুব কয় তাহেৰ ছাৰৰ কথা তেনেকুৱা হ'ব লাগিব কাৰণ তাহেৰ ছাৰক চিনি পাইছিলে মাহঁতে কাৰণ তেওঁৰ দেউতাকে আমাৰ দেউতাই একেটা বাগানতে কাম কৰিছিলে সেই সূত্ৰতে মায়ে কয় তাহেৰৰ নিচিনা হ'ব লাগিব তহঁত পঢ়াত মই তাৰ পিছতে যেতিয়া ডাঙৰ হ'লোঁ চাইকেল মাৰি যেতিয়া আমাৰ ঘৰৰ আগেদি যায় তেতিয়া আমি চাওঁ যে এইজনেই মানুহ যাৰ কথা ইমান কৈছিলে তাৰ পৰা আহি পেলাই তেখেতক ইউনিভাৰ্চিটিত পালোঁ তাৰপিছত বিভিন্ন ঠাইত পালোঁ তাৰ বহু কথা পালোঁ সেই গোটেইখিনি কথা সাৰমৰ্ম মই এইটোৱে বুজিলোঁ যে ছাৰৰ কথা যিসকলে দেখিছে বা যিসকলে তেওঁৰ বিষয়ে শুনিছে তেওঁলোকে হৃদয়ঙ্গম কৰিব পাৰিব আৰু ছাৰে কিমান প্ৰতিটো কথাতে কিমান নিখুঁতভাৱে হোৱাটো বিচাৰে চব কথা মানৱীয় সম্পৰ্কৰ পৰা আদি কৰি লিখিত বস্তুলৈকে এওঁ কৈছে ঠিকেই ছাৰৰ ইমান ধুনীয়া আখৰকেইটা আনে যদি বেয়াকৈ কিবা এটা লিখি দিয়ে ছাৰে বৰ ভাল নাপায় ভালকৈ লিখিব লাগিব আৰু সেইখনকে বাৰে বাৰে তেওঁ চাব ঠিকে হৈ আছে নাই আৰু কোনো এটা কথা সুধিলে তেওঁ অকণমান সময় লৈ পেলাই ভাবি পেলাই ক'ব এইটো বৰ ডাঙৰ কথা সেইকাৰণে অলপ গুৰুত্বৰ কথাবিলাক মই কেইটামান কথা সুধোঁ তেওঁ একেবাৰে ঘৰুৱা কথাৰ কাৰণে মই তেওঁক সুধোঁ যে মই এইটো কৰিলে ভাল পাম হ'ব নেকি ছাৰে কয় ৰ'বা এইটো এটা ঠিকে আছে বাৰু তুমি এনেকুৱা কৰিবাচোন মই সেই এনেকুৱা কৰাৰ কথাটো যিটো দিলে মই তাতে দেখিছোঁ তাতে মই তাৰ উত্তৰটো পাইছোঁগৈ তাৰমানে এটা বিকল্পও আছে এই কথাটো এই মানুহজনৰ এই গুণবিলাক মোৰ খুব মনত পৰে আজি তেখেত মই সেইদিনা কিবা এটা পঢ়িলোঁ এজনৰ বিষয়ে যে সেইবোৰ মানুহ আচলতে তেওঁলোক জীয়াই আছে মৰাৰ পিছতো জীয়াই আছে আনৰ মনত আমাৰ মনত মানে সেই কিতাপখনত পঢ়ি পেলাই আজি ৰাতিপুৱা ভাবিছোঁ তাহেৰ ছাৰৰ কথাটো যে তেখেতো আচলতে গ'ল দৈহিকভাৱে গ'ল কিন্তু বহুতৰ মনত থাকি গ'ল আছে এতিয়াও জীৱিত আছে তেখেতৰ ভাল পোৱা কথাবোৰ আছে সেই কথাটো আৰু এটা কথা মোক খুব চুলে এখেতে বাৰে বাৰে কৈছিলে মই এইটো কথা মোৰ ভালৰ পৰাই কওঁ মই এজন মানুহৰ মোৰ ওচৰতে মই অলপ 4-5 বছৰ মোৰ যেতিয়া PhD কৰি আছিলোঁ মোৰ কাষৰ ৰুমতে এজন মানুহ আছিলে মই আপোনাক এদিন কৈছিলোঁ কাষৰ ৰুমটোত মানে সেইটো অফিচ বুলি কয় মই এইফালে PhD ষ্টুডেণ্ট কাৰণে মই বেলেগ অফিচত আছিলোঁ তেখেতে বেলেগ অফিচত তেওঁ টিচাৰ আছিলে তাৰ সিফালে আৰু কিবা টিচাৰ আছিলে সেই মানুহজনক মই গৈহে গম পালোঁ যে এই মানুহজনক পৃথিৱীৰ আটাইতকৈ ডাঙৰ ভূগোলবিদ বুলি কয় ডেভিড হাৰ্ভে David Harvey was close to he was sitting next to my room in 4 or 5 years. He saw me working. I was working in physical geography and he was as you know a human geographer. And I was surprised to see তেওঁ যেতিয়া ক্লাছ লয় এই ডিপাৰ্টমেণ্টত যেতিয়া এটা ক্লাছ লৈছিলে সেই ক্লাছ লওঁতে ডেভিড হাৰ্ভাৰে ক্লাছটো ল'লে মই তেওঁৰ ক্লাছ লোৱা নাই কিন্তু মোৰ পৰিবাৰ তাত আছিলে তেওঁ সন্ধ্যা বহি আছে তেওঁক মই কৈছিলোঁ যে তোমাৰ এজ এ গ্ৰেজুৱেট ষ্টুডেণ্ট হিচাপে মই ইউ আৰ এণ্টাইটল তুমি পঢ়িব পাৰিবা আমাৰ ইউনিভাৰ্চিটিত দিয়ে যাতে গৃহিণীজনীও ৰ'ব তেওঁ ক্লাছ কৰিছিলে ডেভিড হাৰ্ভাৰে ক্লাছলৈ তেওঁ হয়তো গৈছিলে আৰু তেওঁ যিহেতুকে JNU ষ্টুডেণ্ট আছিলে তেওঁক খুব ভাল পাইছিলে JNU ষ্টুডেণ্ট হৈ পেলাই ডেভিড হাৰ্ভাৰে গ'লে ভাল পাবই আৰু সেই যে ডেভিড হাৰ্ভাৰে ক্লাছটোলৈ গৈছোঁ তেওঁক দেখিছিলোঁ মই তেওঁ মানুহজনৰ বিষয়ে জানিলোঁ যেতিয়া যে আমাৰ হলটোৰ য'ত আমি তেওঁৰ য'ত ক্লাছ হয় সেই হলটোৰ গোটেই কৰিডৰ ভৰ্তি দেখিছোঁ মানুহবোৰ বহিছে দুৱাৰখন খুলি পেলাই লেকচাৰ দুৱাৰ খোলা আছে তাত বহি পেলাই ল'ৰাবোৰ মানুহবোৰ বহিছে, মানুহ ল'ৰা নহয়, ক'ৰবাৰ মানুহ আহিছে, যি আহিব পাৰে, কাৰণ ইউনিভাৰ্চিটিয়ে এলাউ কৰে। ইউনিভাৰ্চিটিয়ে এলাউ কৰিব, যদি জেনুইনলি কোনোবাই শুনিব পাৰে তেওঁক এলাউ কৰে, তেওঁক ক্লাছৰুমত বহিবলৈ নিদিয়ে, তেওঁক বাহিৰত শুনিবলৈ দিয়ে। সেইটো ঠেলা হেঁচাকৈ মানুহবোৰ বহিছে আৰু তেওঁ ডেভিড হাৰ্বাৰে লেকচাৰটো শুনিছে। মই সেই চিন্তাটো আজি তেখেতে কৈ পেলাই মোৰ মনলৈ পৰিছে, এইজন মানুহ আৰু তেখেতৰে এগৰাকী ছাত্ৰী আছিলে, তেওঁ PhD কৰিছিলে, লতা চেটাৰ্জী, আৰু তেখেতৰ PhD থিচিছখন আছিলে মেট্ৰপলি কেলকাতাবোৰ। সেইটো কাৰণে পৃথিৱী বিখ্যাত। লতা চেটাৰ্জী পিছত বষ্টন ইউনিভাৰ্চিটিৰ প্ৰফেচাৰ হৈছিলে। তেওঁলোকৰ ঘৰতে মই আছিলোঁ, লতা চেটাৰ্জীৰ ঘৰতে মই প্ৰথম 3 মাহ সময় আছিলোঁ। আৰু এই গোটেই সংযোগটো মই ইয়াতে আহি পেলাই আজি পাই পেলাই মই বৰ ভাল পালোঁ। আৰু মই তাহেৰ ছাৰৰ বিষয়ে মই আৰু নকওঁ, ইমানখিনিয়ে মই ক'লোঁ। মই এই অনুষ্ঠানটোলৈ আজি আহি পেলাই আজি বহুত অনুষ্ঠান এইখিনি অহা নাছিলোঁ, ইয়ালৈ আহি পেলাই সঁচাকৈ মই কিমান ভাল কাম কৰিলোঁ। প্ৰথমে আহি পেলাই বাইদেউ নাহে বুলি ক'লত মই বৰ মনটো অলপ দুখ পালোঁ, বাইদেউ বোলো গা বেয়া নাহিলে আজি, কিন্তু বাইদেউ পিছত আহিলে মই খুব মনত খুব সন্তোষ পালোঁ। আৰু আটাইতকৈ ভাল পাইছোঁ, ছাৰে আটাইতকৈ ভাল পোৱা মানুহ এজনৰ ভিতৰত আমাৰ আছে ইৰশ্বাদ আলী ছাৰ। তেখেতে দেখি পেলাই মই সঁচাই ভাল পালোঁ যে বাইদেউ আজি নাহিলে, এজন মানুহ থাকিলেও মই বুজিছোঁ যে আজি আছে তেখেতক ৰিপ্ৰেজেণ্ট কৰিবলৈ। বৰ ভাল পাইছোঁ। মই আৰু নকওঁ, মই ইয়াকে কৈ পেলাই তেখেতৰ স্মৰণ কৰিছোঁ।
এই ঝাৰু দিয়া মানে চাফা কৰা, ঝাৰু দিয়া মানে 42ৰ আন্দোলনত গোস্বামী ছাৰৰ ঘৰত মানে আন্দোলনকাৰীবিলাকে লগ হয়। তাহেৰ ছাৰ স্কুলত যায়, লখিমপুৰ হাইস্কুলত, খুটাকটীয়াৰ পৰা লখিমপুৰ হাইস্কুললৈ 5 কিলোমিটাৰ। যাওঁতে তেওঁলোক যিহেতু 8, 9ত পঢ়া ল'ৰা, তেওঁলোকৰ ডিউটি হ'ল যাওঁতে সেই যে আন্দোলনকাৰীবিলাকে মিটিং কৰিব তাতে চাফা, যাওঁতেও ঝাৰু দিব লাগে, আহোঁতেও ঝাৰু দিব লাগে, সেইটো কাম কৰিছিলে। এইবিলাক ছাৰে নিজে কোৱা কথা, বৰ ইণ্টাৰেষ্টিং। আৰু এটা কথা, মই আমাৰ গোস্বামী ছাৰৰ লগত মানে খুব ভাল এইবিলাক, তাৰমানে এই আমাৰ UPৰ ফালৰ পৰা মাজে মাজে কিছুমান পীৰ আহে। মোৰ যিটো কোৱাৰ্টাৰ, সেইটো কোৱাৰ্টাৰত এফালে মুছলমান মানুহ এজন আছিলে আৰু এফালে মই আছিলোঁ। এই ৰূপচান আলী বুলি তেখেত ঢুকাইছে, তেওঁৰ প্ৰতি মই শ্ৰদ্ধা জনাই পেলাই কথাটো কৈছোঁ যে তেওঁ সাধাৰণতে আৰু ৰুমত নাথাকে। সেই পীৰকেইজনে আহি পেলাই মোৰ তাতে সোমাই আশীৰ্বাদ কৰি মানে তেওঁ মই মানে পিছত যে পইচা খোজে, মই চাহ তাহ খুৱাই পেলাই ধুনীয়াকৈ পঠাওঁ। তাৰপিছত মানে পিছত মই কওঁ যে মই মুছলমান নহয়, মই আচলতে বামুণ। সিহঁতে মানে খুব মানে এই কি কৰিলোঁ মানে ঠিকে আছে, চব ঠিকে আছে। তাৰপিছত মানে আৰু এজন এই 2 নম্বৰ কোৱাৰ্টাৰত আৰু এজন মুছলমান মানুহ আছে বুলি কয়। কোনোবাই কয় তাৰমানে গোস্বামী ছাৰৰ যে অলপমান দাঢ়ি আছে, মই ক'ম বোলে 2 নম্বৰ কোৱাৰ্টাৰততো কোনো মুছলমান মানুহ নাই নহয়, এইটো আমাৰ গোস্বামী ছাৰ। কোনোবাই মানে এনে ধেমালি কৰি কৈ দিয়ে এনেকুৱাকৈ। তাৰপিছত মই বুজাই দিওঁ, নাই এইটো মুছলমান মানুহ নহয়। গোস্বামী ছাৰে পাই পেলাই ছাৰে সেইটোকে মানে ইমান ধুনীয়াকৈ, আচ্ছা যিয়ে নহওক বাৰু, এইবিলাক বৰ ইণ্টাৰেষ্টিং কথা। আৰু মানে আমাৰ সমাজখন এটা সময়ত মানে কি ধৰণৰ আছিলে, লখিমপুৰৰ সেই গোটেই কাহিনীবিলাক প্ৰায় তেনেকুৱাই। খুটাকটীয়া বুলি ক'লে ছাৰৰ ঘৰৰ পৰা অকণমান দূৰ, তাৰ পৰা অলপমান গৈ পেলাই এইটো সোমদিৰি নদীত আকৌ আমাৰ মানে অধ্যাপক আমাৰ হীৰেণ দত্ত ছাৰ, হীৰেণ দত্তৰ বোৱাৰী ইয়াতে আছে আমাৰ জিঅ'গ্ৰাফীৰ। তো হীৰেণ দত্ত তাহেৰ ছাৰ 2 বন্ধু। হীৰেণ দত্ত বহুত সৰু। হীৰেণ দত্ত ছাৰক লৈ গৈছে তাহেৰ ছাৰে লখিমপুৰলৈ। হীৰেণ দত্ত ছাৰ কবি, তাত থাকি পেলাই হীৰেণ দত্ত ছাৰৰ প্ৰথম কবিতাৰ যিখন কিতাপ সোমদিৰিৰ চকুলো, সেই তাহেৰ ছাৰৰ ঘৰত থাকি পেলাই লিখা। আমাৰ এই কথাবিলাক কিন্তু খুব ইণ্টাৰেষ্টিং আৰু এইবিলাকৰ এটা ডাঙৰ অৰ্থ আছে। আমাৰ গোটেই ছ'চিয়েল ফেব্ৰিক বুলি কওঁ, ছ'চিয়েল ৰিলেশ্যন বুলি কওঁ। এতিয়া ছ'চিয়েল জিঅ'গ্ৰাফী ঠিকে আছে, উই টিচ ছ'চিয়েল জিঅ'গ্ৰাফী, উই ট্ৰাই টু আণ্ডাৰষ্টেণ্ড ছ'চিয়েল জিঅ'গ্ৰাফী, কিন্তু ছ'চিয়েল ইণ্টিগ্ৰেশ্যন, ছ'চিয়েল ৰিলেশ্যনৰ ক্ষেত্ৰত আমি আচলতে কণ্ট্ৰিবিউট কৰিব পাৰিছোঁ নে পৰা নাই। পাঠ্যপুথি আৰু ৰিয়েলিটি, সেইটো কিন্তু আমাৰ গোস্বামী ছাৰহঁতে কিন্তু একেবাৰে মানে গ্ৰাউণ্ড ৰিয়েলিটিত সেইবিলাক পাই অহা মানুহ। সেইকাৰণে বহুত কথাত সেইবিলাকৰ পৰা উদ্ধত কাৰণে মই ধেমালি কৰি কৈছিলোঁ 2জনৰ দেখাত একে বুলি কৈছিলোঁ। গতিকে মই ৰমান নাগৰীয়াক মই তেখেতকো 2 এষাৰ ক'বলৈ অনুৰোধ জনালোঁ। এখেতো মানে আমাৰ তাহেৰ ছাৰৰ লগত খুব ভাল সম্পৰ্ক আছে, মই সেইকাৰণে মাতিছোঁ। আহক।
Thank you very much for inviting me. Respected dignitaries in the dais, ladies and gentlemen, student friends. In fact, my Dr. Tufik Borbora, Assam Medical College Aselu. Sir logot more contact hoise after retirement 2010. Amar eta NGO asile Al-Amin Welfare Society. Al-Amin means trustworthy. Gotike ami kejonman Guwahatir manue log lagi eta organization khulisilo to serve the community. Ta amar hikya dikya sofalor pra backward. He Al-Aminot dujon mane prostab dile sarok je Muslimor history to likhibo lage. History and heritage of Muslim of Assam. Gotike sare gote project to he was the architect. Paskhon kitab hobo. Tar tinikhon already published hol. Gotike ei bostu to apnaloke record kora nai. Professor Hede jetia koise tar sar kotha apuni kindly etu likhi thobo. Okhomor Musalman, Okhomia nohoy, Okhomor Musalman, Itihak aru Homaj. Sir asile chief editor, teor under 3jon history professor, PhD. Korisile. This project nearly 5 বছৰ লাগিছে আৰু না 3 বছৰ আৰু 5 লাখ মান টকা আমাৰ খৰচ হৈছে আমি পইচা উঠাই দিছিলো গতিকে এটো মনুমেন্টাল ডকুমেন্টস আৰু কিতাপখন ৰিলিজ হৈছিল কলাক্ষেত্ৰ 2013 2013 ৰিলিজ হৈছিল আৰু চিফ সেক্ৰেটাৰী হৰেন দাস আছিল সেই ফাংচনখনত গতিকে আপোনালোকৰ লাইব্ৰেৰীত আছে নাই নাজানো this is one of the contribution of Professor M.TAHER history and heritage of Muslim of Assam আৰু as regards sir মই এটাই কম মানে great person great teacher of teachers ইমান সাৰক দেখিলে যেটো ভক্তি হয় বা বাইদক দেখিলে যেটো ভক্তি হয় হেতু মই কাৰো ওচৰত পোৱা নাই এই 10-15 বছৰ পালো আৰু লাষ্টত মই যে ডক্টৰ তেও যেটা বেমাৰ হল মোক প্ৰায় কনসাল্ট কৰে মাতে গতিকে তেওঁৰ ডেথ বেডত মই আছিলো আটাইকেদিন মোৰ হাতখন ধৰে সব কথা কয় আৰু মই যেতিয়া আমেৰিকা যাব ওলাইছো তেওঁ ৰিজাক ফোন কৰিছে মোৰ বন্ধু এজন যাব দেই বন্ধু বুলি কৈছে তোমাৰ ঘৰত লৈ যাবা গতিকে তেওঁৰ ল'ৰা আহি মোক আটলান্টাত লৈ গৈছিলে গতিকে তেওঁলোকৰ লগত মই এটা ফ্যামিলি মেম্বাৰ নিচিনা হৈ গলো আৰু নকও থ্যাংক ইউ ভেৰি মাচ
আপোনালৈ ধন্যবাদ থাকিল এইবিলাক কথা আমি জনাটো দৰকাৰ আৰু আসলতে এটা বিভাগ এটা বিষয়ৰ মানুহবিলাকৰ মাজত যেটো সম্পৰ্ক থাকে দি গ্ৰোইং আপ উইথ এ ডিসিপ্লিন আৰু তাত বিভিন্ন মানুহৰ যি ধৰণৰ সম্পৰ্ক থাকে সেইবিলাক যিবিলাক ৰিটেন ফৰ্মত থাকে সেইবিলাক খুব কম আৰু যি অলিখিত বহুত কাহিনী থাকে সেইবিলাক কিন্তু সাংঘাতিক ধৰণৰ আমি যিখিনি শুনা কথা তাৰ মানে কথাটো এনেকুৱা যে SP Das sir আমাৰ হৰিপ্ৰচন্দ্ৰ দাস প্ৰফেসৰ SP Das he took Professor M.TAHER to a wedding ceremony somewhere বিয়াত মাতি লৈ গৈছে M.TAHER sirক আসলতে নিমন্ত্ৰণ কৰা নাছিলে লগত কিবা লৈ গলাই বিয়াখন বলাচোন এনেকৈ লৈ গুচি গ'ল যাই পেলাই বিয়াত এই বিয়াখনত M.TAHER sir মানে কি SP Das চিনাকি কৰি দিছে এখেত আমাৰ কিবা ভট্টাচাৰ্য বুলি কৈছে M.TAHER sir কৈছে হি ইজ এ ব্ৰাহ্মণ SP Das নিজে কোৱা M.TAHERক লৈ গৈছো তাৰপিছত এই বামুণবিলাকে আকৌ মুছলমান গ'লে অকণমান দিগদাৰি পাব পাৰে গতিকে M.TAHERক মই ভট্টাচাৰ্য বুলি কৈ পেলাই সোমাই লৈ পেলাই খুৱাই ধুৱাই লৈ আহিছোঁ এতিয়া এইবিলাক কথা ভূগোলৰ মাজততো মানে আমাৰ মানে হেৰাই যাব আৰু আমি আমাৰ চৰ্চাততো এইবিলাক কথা নাথাকে ইমান সুন্দৰ এনেকুৱা ধৰণৰ কথা আছিলে যিয়ে নহওক মই তেখেতক M.TAHER sirৰ ঘৰতে প্ৰথম লগ পাইছোঁ সেই সংগঠনৰ বিষয়ে M.TAHER sirয়ে মোক বুজাই দিছিলে যিয়ে নহওক আপোনাক ধন্যবাদ এতিয়া বোধহয় আৰু আমাৰ ইতিমধ্যে বহুত দেৰি হ'ল গতিকে আমি আৰু শেষলৈকে আহোঁ আপোনালোক সকলোকে ধন্যবাদ ভালকৈ ধন্যবাদ জনাইছোঁ আৰু আসলতে আমাৰ গোস্বামী দাদাৰ তেখেতৰ চকুৰ অপাৰেশ্যন হৈছে আজিৰ পৰা 20-25 দিন আগতে গতিকে তেখেতে যেতিয়া বিমল কৰে নিমন্ত্ৰণ কৰে তেখেতে তেতিয়া প্ৰায় আহিব পাৰিব নোৱাৰিব সেই ধৰণৰ এটা ডাউট আছিলে কিন্তু তেখেতৰো ছাৰৰ প্ৰতি আগ্ৰহ আৰু আপোনালোকে জানে আৰু গোস্বামী দাদাই যেতিয়া কথা কয় সেই কথাবিলাক মানে আপোনাৰ ঠিক তেনেকুৱাকৈ সেইবিলাক বহুত কথা অলিখিত কথা কিন্তু খুব খুব গুৰুত্বপূৰ্ণ কথা আৰু সেইবিলাক কথা কিন্তু লাহে লাহে আমাৰ নতুন জেনেৰেশ্যনৰ মাজত এনেকুৱা ধৰণৰ ইনফৰ্মেল কথা কোৱা কালচাৰটো লাহে লাহে গ'ল এতিয়া লাহে লাহে খুব ফৰ্মেল ক'ৰবাত কোনোবাই ধৰিব নেকি এনেকুৱাকৈ খুব ফৰ্মেলিটি কথা কোৱা এটা কালচাৰ আহি গ'ল গতিকে যিয়েই নহওক তেখেতকো আমাৰ ফালৰ পৰা ধন্যবাদ দিছোঁ আৰু ইছাদ আলী ছাৰৰ কথাটো মই নকওঁৱেই ডিপাৰ্টমেণ্টে যিটো সহযোগ কৰিছে সেইটো আৰু এখেতক ধন্যবাদ জনালোঁ আৰু কেইবাজনো ব্যক্তিয়ে ছাৰৰ দ্বাৰা আকৰ্ষিত হৈ নাইবা আমাৰ ভূগোলৰ পৰিয়ালটোৰ প্ৰতি থকা আস্থাৰ কাৰণে তেওঁলোক আহিছে সকলোকে ধন্যবাদ জনালোঁ মই এইখিনি প্ৰায় শলাগৰ শৰাইৰ নিচিনাকৈ অকণমান ক'লোঁ যদিও মই এতিয়া চন্দ্ৰকান্ত পাৱে আমাৰ প্ৰফেচাৰ য়ংগেষ্ট প্ৰফেচাৰ তেওঁক মই টু এক্সটেণ্ড ভোট অফ থেংকছ প্লিজ
A very good afternoon. I stand here on behalf of the organizers to offer the vote of thanks. At the outset, I would like to thank our chief guest, Professor Ranjit Kumar Dev Goswami sir, for being here with us today and gracing the occasion. My sincere gratitude to our invited speaker, Professor Sachidanand Sinha sir, for delivering the 8th M.TAHER Memorial Lecture. Thank you, sir. I would like to extend my genuine thanks to the family members of late Professor M.TAHER, including Professor Irsad Ali sir, and in particular Mrs. Setera Taher madam, for their kind financial support, suggestions, and active involvement in the memorial committee. Again, I am grateful to all the members of Professor M.TAHER Memorial Committee. Moving forward, I would like to express my appreciation to all the distinguished guests who are present here today, the research scholars, and my students' friends for being a wonderful audience. I would like to end by thanking everyone who were involved with this event. Thank you.
মই শেহত এটা কথা কওঁ তাৰমানে আমাৰ যি তাহেৰ ছাৰৰ বাইদেউ ইয়াতে আহিব নোৱাৰিলে আমাৰ বিমল কৰে জানে যে বাইদেৱে কিমান মানে গুৰুত্ব সহকাৰে এই সভাখনৰ কথাটো লয় আজি তেখেত আহিব নোৱাৰাটো আজি আমাৰ যিকেইখন সভা হ'ল ক'তো তেখেত এবচেণ্ট থকা নাছিলে আৰু তেখেতে মানে অসুখ কাৰণে আহিব নোৱাৰিলে আমি তেখেতৰ আৰোগ্য কামনা কৰিলোঁ আৰু লগতে মই আমাৰ বিমল কৰে ভোট অফ থেংকছ দিলে ইয়াতে 20জন মানুহৰ নাম ল'লেহেঁতেন কাৰণ তেওঁৰ ঘটনা হ'ল তেওঁ মানুহ গোটাইছে সেইখিনি মানুহক যদি অলপমান দুই একাষাৰ কিবা ভাল লগা কথা ক'ব পাৰি তেতিয়াহ'লে ভৱিষ্যতে তেওঁলোক অহাৰ বাটটো মুকলি হৈ থাকে তেওঁ মানে শেষৰ ফালে তেওঁৰ দ্বাৰা কোৱা নহ'ল আৰু গতিকে মই তেওঁৰ হৈয়ে আপোনালোকে যিসকলে আমাৰ ছাত্ৰ ছাত্ৰীসকল ৰিচাৰ্চ স্কলাৰসকল কলেজৰ পৰা কেইবাগৰাকী আহিছে আপোনালোকে নিজ গুণে আৰু এনেকুৱা এখন সভাত উপস্থিত থকাটো কিন্তু নিজৰ কাৰণেও সৌভাগ্য এজন বিশেষ ব্যক্তিৰ সোঁৱৰণত আৰু এটা বিশেষ বক্তৃতা আৰু কিছুসংখ্যক মানুহে যে আমি ইয়াতে লগ লাগিছোঁ এইটো কিন্তু কম আকৰ্ষণীয় কথা নহয় আৰু ছাত্ৰ ছাত্ৰীসকলে পাঠ্যপুথিৰ বাহিৰত যাতে এনেকুৱা অনুষ্ঠানৰ প্ৰতি সদায় আগ্ৰহ প্ৰকাশ কৰি থাকে তাৰ কাৰণে মই তেখেতক অনুৰোধ জনাই আমাৰ শেষত তাহেৰ ছাৰৰ দ্বাৰা মানে লিখিত এটা গীত আৰু সেইটো গীত আমাৰ ডিপাৰ্টমেণ্টে সদায় সেই গীতটো মানে পৰিৱেশন কৰে আৰু সেই গীতটিৰে আমাৰ এই সভাখন সমাপ্ত হ'ব দিছ ছং ৱাজ একচুৱেলি ৰিটেন বাই প্ৰফেচাৰ তাহেৰ এণ্ড দিছ ইজ এ ইউজুৱেলি ইউ গট ইট য়েছ অ'কে গতিকে সেই গানটো এতিয়া পৰিৱেশন কৰিব আৰু তাৰপিছতে সভা ভংগ হ'ব ধন্যবাদ